joy because I'm a leftist. And you were pointing out, the bomb strikes going lower in Libya under Biden. Sure, we can all find points where American imperialism ebbs and flows in certain areas under Democrats and Republicans. And we could even say overarchingly that Democrats, it tends to ebb under Democrats. Sure, that doesn't challenge the leftist view that both of them uphold this system of imperialism and expropriation.
But you're choosing the Palestinians where we would both agree that is where the most.
You chose the Libyans, you chose the Syrians. We were both doing this. That was the practice we were engaged in.
You chose the Libyans.
No, you made a point about Libyan strikes ending under Biden.
I brought up Ukraine, and then you brought up Libya. But I said, but
so Ukraine, sure.
Okay, but my point is that when you bring up Gaza, or not just Gaza, the Palestinians in general, we would both agree that is where you see the most unanimous consensus amongst Democrats and Republicans. But there are more meaningful differences, I would argue, for other parts of the world.
Like what?
Like I said, Ukraine.
Okay, where else?
So, the largest war that's happening currently. Like I said, frankly, drone strikes in the rest of the Middle East.
Really? Where else in the Middle East did we disagree on drone strikes?
Like I said, so drone strikes went down across the board under the Biden administration.
But not under the Obama administration.
We don't disagree on that. But Obama was very drone heavy. I don't disagree.
We're talking about Democrats.
And guess what? Even then, if we want to compare Obama to Trump, Trump had substantially more drone strikes than Obama.
Sure, they went up under Obama, though, right? Like this is the issue. And by the way,
but that's because
military spending increased under all of them. Do you agree with that, right?
I think they were technically a couple of years of decrease under Obama, but military spending is not what my objection is.
Have we had a domestic war that is lacking in my mind? Every dollar that goes into military spending goes into foreign intervention.
Yes, but I'm not against all foreign intervention, and obviously we're going to disagree with that more.
Sure, yeah, I'm against. I don't think America should be anywhere other than America. So cool.
And
we can split hairs about given areas. That's the difference. Both of them support increasing the infrastructure for foreign intervention, which has led to the most genocides of any regime in the world. And I disagree with that. And I think they're the same.
You think the United States has led to more regimes? Are you saying than modern governments?
I think within the past 70 years, the United States regime. It's a bit of a cheat because there's just more people on this earth, right? Have you read the Jakarta Method ever?
I have. It's a great book by Vincent Bevins.
That's his conclusion as well.
It's a fantastic book. Sort of, yeah, but I think you have to go a little bit you have to imply, for example, the largest death toll was under Suharto in Indonesia, obviously, which was
attributable to the American CIA, I would say.
Sort of, in the sense that we sold weapons, but Suharto would have still come to power even without the United States.
I don't think so. I think if you read Vincent Bevins closely, he suggests that it wouldn't have.
I disagree.
Largely and because of the relationship that the CIA and the U.S. military-industrial complex made with Suharto. Yeah.
I disagree. I think that there were absolutely anti-communist forces that existed in Indonesia. They viewed Sukarno as being too soft.
Yeah, but there were communist portions as well, right? And they had relationships internationally.
I don't disagree. I do think there's a tendency among leftists. I don't want to pivot too far away from what we were talking about before. Is that there is a tendency to think that nothing in the world would happen without the United States involvement. I think that there are overthrows. Well, but I think in cases like Indonesia, I do think that there's reason to think that Sukarno would have still been overthrown.
Maybe. I don't think that's the reality we live in. And also that wasn't my claim, right? My claim was that we committed it. The only thing required for that claim is not a but-for situation. It is a attributable, right? We are complicit. We are engaged. Complicity is a form of guilt. We are complicit with that genocide. We are responsible for that genocide. And so just statistically we have. And so once again, to kind of recenter, which is fine, we started off on a semantic point, which is fine. I think the only remedy to this...
Would you consider China genocidal?
Against whom?
The people of Darfur. China sold weapons to Omar al-Bashir all throughout the massacres in Darfur.
Let's talk about Darfur. Darfur?
Yes.
Even Amnesty hasn't accused China of being complicit under the Genocide Convention of genocide in Darfur. I don't think
that was the claim. I'm saying that.
No, I'm going to follow international. I'm going to follow international legal consensus generally.
Did they claim that there was a genocide in Indonesia?
Who? Amnesty?
Yes, the people you're citing.
I mean, Vincent Bevins is sufficient citation for that. Yeah.
So just okay, you're saying there's not authors that have claimed that there are genocide took place
Well,
in Darfur?
so you asked me my opinion.
It just
I'm gonna
seems,
give you-
it seems,
so wait, let me give a
seems
full, let me give a
I feel like
full
you're being-
response to the claim you made.
You're being
Let me give a full
inconsistent.
response
You're
to the
saying
claim you made. I'm being very
Bevins
specific
or
about my
amnesty?
claims. So, well, because I mean, I don't think Vincent Bevins have commented on China. And I'm not making a cohesive list of all reputable sources.
No, but
Let
you're
me
saying.
finish. Wait, can I just finish the sentence for a second?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So, like, I haven't seen sufficient evidence that they have violated the Genocide Convention as it relates to Darfur. I have seen sufficient evidence, and once again, you're going to consider this a pivot, but I don't think it is. I have seen sufficient evidence per Amnesty that the UAE has. The UAE, a close benefactor of
No, that's a different.
the American Empire.
I'm not talking about right now. I'm talking about in the early 2000s, the gigantic massacres that took place in like 2004, 2003.
Oh, I can't speak to that. I don't know China's relationship with that.
I mean, like Omar al-Bashir was the dictator in Sudan at that time. It was the Janjaweed militias, which have evolved into the RSF. But China was selling his regime weapons the entire time that those massacres took place. It's widely believed that there was a genocide that took place. I don't know if Amnesty in particular claims that there was a genocide. We could look it up. Maybe they do. But regardless, though, I'm saying, do you view China as being genocidal for that reason? But you're saying
like,
no.
Once again, I can't specify to the. I don't know the situation of the Darfur massacre. On the contention that they did knowingly sell arms intended to use in genocide or with a reasonable risk of using genocide. Yeah, I'm an international legal like I've studied international legal law. Yeah, I'm totally fine. Or public international law. I'm totally fine with finding China guilty for genocidal actions for trade. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious if
I can't speak to Darfur specifically.
I feel like it took longer to get that concession out than I would have expected. I would have expected.
Well, genocides,
to say,
they've committed less genocides. Yeah, so they get a little more charity from me. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I think that's fair, right? I think if you do Operation Condor, you get a little less charity from me. I think probably fair.
Yeah, I think that we agree that Operation Condor was really bad. Do we agree things like we don't have to compare death tolls because I think it's a bit crass.
I think we do. I think if the Nazis do something, I'm going to be more quick to call it genocidal. I think that's probably fair. But
if
regardless,
of course I would agree. The Nazis are genocidal, of course. But I don't.
Yeah, and I think the U.S., which took in a lot of Nazis and they joined the CIA.
I don't know if it's a number game. Well, here's the thing. Like, the Soviets were making deals with the Nazis like when they were actually in power, which is kind of
so was America.
Really?
Right? We were trading.
Really?
What was Ford doing over there?
Well, is a company the leader of the government?
Did we sanction Ford?
Is the Molotov okay? But when we talk about the Molotov,
is the largest company in America doing deals with the Nazis not relational to our government?
I don't know if Ford was the largest company at that time, but regardless, do you disagree that that's a different thing than the government officially sanctioning a non-aggression pact with the Nazis and then invading a country with them?
Didn't we co-sign their annexation of a country with the Sudetenlands?
So which is where we would all agree.
Okay, so they're both bad. Fantastic. I'm not a lover. I'm not a lover of the relationship between the USSR and Germany. That has nothing to do with my claim.
We can't pretend that there's parity there, though. We all agree.
I don't have to.
You just were trying to claim that there's parity.
No, I was just no. You're not making.
Okay, do you agree that the Soviet Union acted more shamefully towards the Nazi regime?
Oh no, I think they killed more Nazis.
I don't know about that. When you're saying
wait. Really,
they didn't attack.
You don't think the Soviets killed more Nazis?
They didn't attack until after the Nazis invaded them.
Can I go to that claim specifically?
Okay, I'm happy to say that the Soviets killed plenty of Germans. But what I'm saying,
did they kill more Nazis than America did?
Yes, probably. But what I'm saying,
I think that's less shameful.
No. I think what's shameful is that they were happy to work with the Nazis.
So was America.
No, we weren't.
Yes, we did.
We
traded with Nazi Germany. We worked with them on the Sudetenlands.
In 1939, when Hitler invaded Poland, the British and the France declared war on Germany, and the Soviets decided to invade Poland with them.
Okay.
Well, that's
you're trying to. Once again, but your bar. I want to be specific about your bar, Carl.
And during that time, we stopped trading with we stopped trading with the Nazis, and we started selling weapons to Britain and France. Well, France fell pretty quickly, but we started selling weapons to Britain the Soviets were selling the Nazis oil in exchange for weapons that they used to invade Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. All at the
When
same
did
time with the
America
Nazis.
stop trading with Japan?
Japan's different. We're talking about the. Wait, can you not pivot? Can you agree though? In this instance, we're talking about behavior towards the
Wait,
Nazis.
what's your specific question?
I'm saying that the Soviets behaved more shamefully towards the Nazis.
No, I don't think that's true.
Okay, and so I want you.
So do you want
hear
my
what
justification for that?
when they invaded Poland together, what's worse than that?
I think they made up for it by slaughtering a bunch of Nazis. I think that was pretty cool.
But they didn't do that until the Nazis invaded them. They
So
were
specify
Stalin
your
wanted to keep.
question.
I'm saying that Stalin wanted to keep working with Hitler, and the only reason
So
he
did
stopped
Churchill.
is because no, he didn't. When did Churchill want to work with Hitler?
Do you know what appeasement is?
Churchill was one of the most adamant people against. When do you think Churchill became prime minister?
I don't have it on hand.
Okay, Churchill didn't become prime minister until 1939 after Chamberlain.
Whoever the guy, I don't bother myself with British people. Whoever the person that did
Chamberlain.
appeasement was.
Okay, yeah, Chamberlain is shameful. Of course, yeah, Chamberlain's terrible. Yes.
Okay, cool. So but we're talking about the UK. Can I answer your question? One second. You've spoken a lot here for a second.
He was against appeasement.
What? Churchill.
He was against appeasement.
Whatever. One of the UK people were. Regardless, the UK did work with the Nazis. They did appeasement.
It's just like
it's a good point. Yeah, I messed up which one was Churchill. You're right. Apologies.
No. It's just like saying the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. Chamberlain, Churchill, they're exactly the same.
I mean, Chamberlain was a dickhead that committed genocide in the Raj. I don't know.
I agree. Chamberlain was really bad.
Cool. So your specific claim is that within a specific time period, were the Soviets worse because they invaded Poland with the Nazis? Maybe. I don't really care on that scale, considering they certainly made up for it morally by slaughtering a bunch of Nazis. And I also think America and the UK were perfectly well shameful, first of all, when they were trading with the previous rulers of Germany, and also committing genocide with Germany in Namibia. And I also think they were
with the Weimar Republic. What are you saying? We're shameful for trading with the Weimar?
The Weimar, yeah.
Why do you think we're shameful for trading with the Weimar Republic?
The Weimar, which maintained like German imperialism and maintained like British imperialism.
So do you think that because the Weimar Republic, are you equating them to the Nazis?
So I think that I'm speaking specifically about the Namibian genocide, which I do think is equivalent to the Nazis. Yes.
What's the death toll? What's the death toll in the Namibian? I know that the death toll is like in the tens of thousands. I don't think it's in the millions.
I mean, we can go through the colonial genocides. I think the genocide of the Herero and Nama people. Also, I don't think that's how I judge the harms of genocides.
But then you just were. Wait. You're lying, though. You literally said you go by the numbers. That's how we got into this point. You said you go by the numbers.
That's not what I said. What exactly did I say?
You did. You're saying that the United States is worse because our number is higher.
I said I would trust us less.
No, you said that we were worse because the number's higher.
Worse than whom?
You said we were worse than everybody. You said we were the worst of everybody in the last 70 years.
Okay, let me make a more clear, actually defensible stance. America has the American Empire has committed the most genocides of any empire in the world. I think that's what I said. But if that's not what I said, I apologize. That's what I meant. We've committed the most genocides of any empire in the world, which is true. The British Empire might give us a run for our money. The Spanish Empire might as well. I'm pretty sure the American one does that the best. But yeah, I think we give less grace to the people that did genocide. I think we did the most genocide in the world.
The Nazi regime would beat us. The Nazi regime has a much higher death toll.
No, it doesn't. I mean, that's that. So the conclusion of the Jakarta method was that wasn't true.
Absolutely. Wait, what do you think the death? Okay, we both read the Jakarta method. What do you think the Jakarta method puts the death toll at?
So it cites specifically
in Indonesia. In Indonesia, the high estimate is 1 million.
So can I be very specific? It cites a study showing that American sanctions within the past 70 years have killed 35 million people.
How many people do you think the Nazis killed?
How many people do you think the Nazis killed?
The Nazis killed 25 million Soviets alone. They killed at least 6 million Jewish people. They killed, I think, a few million Poles. We're already over 35.
Okay, so we have 35 from sanctions, right? we have 1 million from Suharto, right? We have a few million, or like 1 million in indirect numbers through all of South America, right? We have the American genocide of the natives. Like, we can keep counting them up.
I'm sorry. Wait, this is a terrible way of trying to count things. One, when you go with, do you disagree that there is a qualitative difference between actively murdering people versus being complicit in governments that you don't like?
Between actively murdering people and being complicit, I don't think that, so, like, once again, I come from a legal background. Complicity is a form of guilt. So my discussion.
Sure,
wait, let me.
okay,
Let me also, this is one second. Let me give a slightly
background.
longer answer. I don't think the question is if there's a qualitative difference between deaths. The question.
Do you think there's a qualitative difference between the Nazis and the United States?
Yeah, there's a qualitative difference between every country and every country. Duh.
Okay.
What?
Yeah. Okay. I'm saying, like, a meaningful qualitative difference. Citing
There's a meaningful qualitative. This is a nonsensical question. Ask a question that actually, like, there's a meaningful qualitative difference between everything and everything. Yes.
Okay. Not really. No, I don't think there's a meaningful quantitative difference between everything. I don't know if there's the qualitative. I don't know. For example, the qualitative difference between Himmler and Hitler. I'd say it's pretty.
Yeah, there's a qualitative. If you study enough between them, there's
not a meaningful difference between the two of them.
In that they're two different people that had two different ideologies. Yes, there is. Like, it's just a matter of matter and the context in which you're speaking.
Himmler and Hitler didn't have different ideologies.
Sorry, have you read Himmler?
A little bit.
They did believe different things. They had strong overlap. No one's doubting that. We all reject it.
Do you think there was a meaningful difference between what Heinrich Himmler?
I'm going to Jordan Peterson this.
Yeah, what do I mean by do? Okay, like,
yeah.
a difference in how we should perceive them as guilty.
Oh, so as to whether we... So can I ask a more helpful question? Whether we should perceive them as guilty?
Should we view them as equally culpable for the Holocaust? I would say yes.
And Hitler.
Yes.
Maybe. I'd say Hitler is probably more culpable.
Even though Himmler was one of the main people that oversaw it.
I'd say it goes like... I'd say it's like that.
Okay, sure. We could say that there's maybe a difference.
I think that's meaningful because that's like, 200 years of, sentences, or 195 or whatever. Really, I think it's meaningful. Your question. Can I just say, this is like, I think what you mean is, I'm Carl. I believe there is a moralistic difference between the malicious, intentional, systemic slaughter of people that the Nazis did, and America supporting a country that did such a systemic, malicious, and harmful slaughter of people.
Well, yeah,
those two things are different. Let me be very clear about my claim. This is moving the goalpost. My claim did not include those differences. My claim was about genocides you are complicit in. Both are complicit.
Okay, but sanctions are not genocide. And the 35
if they enable genocide, they are.
I'm sure you would. Wait, hold on. What do you mean by that? Well, for example, with saying when you get to 35 million dead with sanctions over what period? It's post World War II, I assume.
About 70 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You agree that there's going to be contestation over those numbers.
But the Nazis also... Wait, the numbers you were making... The Nazis didn't commit a genocide against the Russians. That was a war.
I would argue there was a genocide against the Slavic people.
You think them killing Soviet troops was a genocide?
There were in things like the siege in Leningrad. There were like explicit.
Sure, there were specific instances of genocide, but the vast majority of those 25 million, at least the ones that were troops, I don't know the proportion that were troops, but I mean,
a lot of them were civilians. I have zero problem saying there was a Slavic genocide that took place on the Eastern Front.
Sure, nor do I. That was my point. My point was about specifically that 25 million includes troops, right?
Sure, of course.
Right, them fighting against the troops, that's not a genocide, generally, as it's generally understood.
I don't know. The Srebrenica massacre, I mean, they killed troops as well as, I don't know. Like, you don't think that troops can be killed as a part of a genocide?
I think they can. That's not my claim.
You think they can? That's not your claim. What is your claim?
Do you think the Soviets killing German troops was a genocide?
If just killing... do I think the Soviets killing Germans?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I don't think that was a genocide at all.
Okay, nor do I. Agreed. Right?
Okay.
Do you think? Okay. Do you think America killing
I'm saying
Japanese?
I think the Germans had genocidal intent.
Yeah. So this is the thing. This is where it gets really, really messy. Right?
Okay.
Is I think some of the Soviets might have had genocidal intent. Right? I think it's very fair to say, or for a better example, America bombing Japan. I think that was a genocide. Right? I think us bombing Nagasaki and Hiroshima was a genocide. Would you agree?
I think that there was absolutely genocidal intent that there were U.S. officials that had. Like U.S. officials had. Like, what is
Okay.
it? The general that famously said after this war, the only place they'll speak Japanese is in hell. That's like clearly genocidal.
Okay. So this is where we can go through, count deaths in this way, right? I think the data is on my side for overarchingly the numbers. Mainly, and this is like the main conceit, is the world has like massively increased in population, my friend. It's nearly impossible for anyone prior to 1940, right, or 1950 to beat the scale of harm the one world hegemon, America, has had in this world, right? So, like, I've intentionally set that statement up to be so rock solid. Like, on this scale, it's just not beatable because there are so many more people. So I don't know why we've gone into it. It doesn't really matter, right? I made it to justify why I give more grace to China than America, right? And it's kind of nonsensical to our actual differences. That's why I think the questions you were asking were nonsensical.
Nonsensical?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to say, is there a meaningful difference between this country and this country? They're two countries. What do you mean? They're two countries. There's a meaningful difference between Luxembourg and Liechtenstein. Whatever.
Sure. I agree there's meaningful differences between countries. I felt like that we maybe got lost in the weeds a little bit. I think
Sure, we can go back to the sauce.
I think it's a little reductive of the point I was trying to make, but regardless, bring us back to earth. What is
let's go back to the sauce. You said that the regarding the fall of the Soviet Union, you said that the drop in life expectancy was acutely felt in Russia. Do you recognize that it was felt for the 30 years following the fall of the Soviet Union in Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan?
Yes, I agree. I don't know if it's purely the result of the fall of the Soviet Union because all of those places became very brutal dictatorships.
Why do you think they became brutal dictatorships?
I think it was a holdover of previously having been under decades of dictatorship, actually centuries of dictatorship.
Do you think it had anything to do with the massive wealth concentration that happened following the westernization of the post-Soviet economy?
No, I think those places had literally been dictatorship. They had been dictatorships for centuries.
Okay, so you think it's purely cultural?
No, not cultural. I just think that there are
why do you think the dictatorships following the fall of the Soviet Union decreased life expectancy?
Why do I think that? Okay, but this is a different claim. Why do I think that there was a decrease in life expectancy in Turkmenistan, like just specifically?
Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Russia.
Sure. Yes, I agree that there was issues with the economic reforms that led to a lot of deaths.
But you dismissed it as acutely felt in Russia. It wasn't. That's not true. It was felt for 30 years in Russia, not acute, and it was felt across post-Soviet states. Once again, if you read Jakarta Method, barring Poland. Oh no, this is red shirts and this is black shirts and reds. My bad, not Jakarta Method.
I have not. I've only.
You should read Black Shirts and Reds by Michael Parenti.
I've only read Parenti's book on Caesar. I have not read Black Shirts and Reds.
Don't read his shit on Yugoslavia. He got it like half wrong. Ignore him on that. He's good on other things.
I guess a little more than half wrong. But regardless, though, the reason I say acutely in Russia is because the numbers were so much larger, and they had one of the worst bounce backs in terms of life expectancy.
Sure.
Now, so that's why I said acutely.
You cite the only other real, so Czechoslovakia and Poland, right?
No, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Hungary, Romania, all of the Baltics.
All of the Baltics. Was Romania held as a core part of the USSR?
No, not a part. Poland and Hungary weren't either. Or
no.
Czechoslovakia.
Okay. So following the end of the Eastern Bloc.
They were all. Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, following the Eastern Bloc. Okay,
it was the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe.
He was talking about the USSR, though. So it's fair to include the rest of the USSR, like Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan,
No,
Kyrgyzstan.
I don't think it's. I have no problem including places like Kazakhstan or Turkmenistan.
Sure. Do you think that the fall of the USSR was like one of the largest drops in mortality the world has ever seen?
I think that to an extent, so no, the claim that it was the largest peacetime reduction, I don't think I just don't think that's factually accurate.
Oh, what would be the counter? Like what?
It's my understanding that in the late 50s and the early 60s in China was a larger reduction in life expectancy. During the Great Leap Forward.
Maybe I need to get the numbers on that. And depends who you're pulling them from.
It's also my understanding that there were larger peacetime drop reductions as a result of the AIDS outbreak in various African nations in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Oh, late 90s. Probably true per capita. Per population. Although once again, the counterfactual as to if communism didn't drop and they could get reasonable medication is, a counterfactual we might.
But this is also why that's why I also do cite the fact that in many like Western capitalist nations, the life expectancy was much higher at the time of the fall of the Soviet Union than it is in Russia today. So
life
when we say that
was higher. What? Repeat that. Life expectancy was higher in something like France than it is Russia today. Yeah, I don't like Russia today because I think it's a post-Soviet. Okay.
No, not just Russia today. I'm saying that your claim is that the life expectancy would have been better if it stayed the Soviet Union. I disagree with that claim.
Well, it's a nearly impossible. It's a nearly impossible counterfactual.
I don't know if it's nearly impossible. We can look at East and West Germany and see that the life expectancy was consistently much higher in West Germany than it was in East Germany, and it didn't start to come together until after the fall of the
inclusion in the West. Yeah, I think being part of the wealthiest portion of the world is very helpful. Yeah,
I always love that. So yes, we both agree. Being capitalist does make you better off. Yes, being wealthier.
It also leads you to commit like mass genocide across the world. Right.
You're
willing to say, "Oh my God, look how wealthy and happy all of these people in Europe and America are." Just ignore that we slaughtered millions of people across the global South that was built on.
I feel like it's a bit of a pivot though, because if we're talking about life expectancy,
it's not that life expectancy was built upon the blood of the Congolese people.
Okay, but no. So obviously, I agree that there's I agree that there's enormous damage and death that has happened in the Congo. We're going to agree. Yes, we're going to talk about.
Do you think we profited off of it?
Do I think that we profited off of like?
Do you think the Dutch profited off of the Congolese genocides?
The Dutch, you mean the Belgians?
The Belgians. I don't recognize the difference between the European nations.
Yeah, nor should you. No. Do I think that the Belgians profited off of of course, under like King Leopold and stuff? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think America continues to profit off of exploitation in Africa?
Well, yeah, sure, of course. We're both going to think.
Okay. Do you think in part our life expectancy is attributable to that?
Do I think that getting cobalt and coltan? I don't know if that specifically, but no, I don't know if I would agree with that.
You don't think the general wealth in America is contributing to the life expectancy in America? You don't think the tax base upon which we fund those social programs is influenced by the mass exploitation and the billions of dollars stolen from the global South?
I guess the point that I would make is that if, let's say, Africa was substantially wealthier, substantially better off, I don't think that American life expectancy would decrease. I don't think that there's anything. I do think there's.
No, but do you think if we stop exploiting?
I think that there's economic benefits to trade. I don't think there's economic benefits necessarily to simply exploitation.
Do you think the relationship between America and Africa is exploitative?
I mean, Africa's not a country, but like in certain countries,
yes, I'm talking about the region. I'm talking about the continent. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, sure. In the Congo specifically, I would think we both agree with that.
In the Congo, in the Sudan, in Nigeria, Niger, and Burkina Faso, right?
I don't know how much is being exported from places like Sudan or Burkina Faso currently.
We're benefiting from Sudan specifically on the gold in our relationship to the UAE.
We are. The UAE is
the UAE, one of our closest allies in the area.
I know that. Yeah, are we? Is it our closest ally? You're forgetting
who are they more closely allied with?
Who is the UAE more closely allied with? Probably Saudi Arabia. But my point is, I don't think we're benefiting.
Who's allied with Saudi Arabia?
We're not going to disagree. Yeah, someone Oman probably. Okay, but
the United States. They're farther away from Oman than we fund the genocide we committed in Yemen with Saudi Arabia.
I agree that we are. I think we're using the word genocide too loosely. But regardless,
I think there was a genocide committed in Yemen. But yeah.
I don't know if it's a genocide. It's horrible. It's terrible. I don't think
against the Shia. Yeah, I think the active Yemeni crisis was. But regardless, that's fine. We can disagree on that.
we both agree it's terrible. I just have a more refined definition of genocide. Regardless of, my point is, I don't think that we are benefiting from the gold that the UAE is exploiting from Sudan currently.
You don't think we are?
How are we benefiting from that?
So, do you think do you think American capital flows through United Arab Emirates gold markets?
Does it? To what extent?
Yes, to a large extent. Right?
To a large extent? Like I said, microscopic percentage of U.S.
Yeah,
capital.
because we're a huge country with a huge amount of wealth.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. To what extent, though? Like, I would argue that the vast majority of our wealth is not coming
what's the number, right, that matters to you? It's one example with one specific point, right? My point is that we benefit.
I don't know if okay. Look, we're both going to agree.
Do you think we through Israel benefit from
we should be sanctioned? I don't think we benefit in any way. I don't think we benefit in any way from what's happening to the Palestinians. I think it's horrible. But in terms of the UAE, I think we should. We're both going to agree. I think we should do whatever we can to make the UAE stop supporting the RSF. We both agree with that. But I mean,
why do you think we don't? Why do you think the American ruling class doesn't?
Why we don't stop the UAE? Frankly, I think there's an enormous amount of racism towards people in Africa. I don't think people care very much.
But so, I mean, why do we're super racist against Arabs anyway, right? We give billions of dollars to Saudi Arabia, right? What do you think the difference there is?
I think that there's a huge amount of indifference in the United States, and I'm sure you would agree with this, to people dying in Africa. I think it's terrible,
if they profit us, there is an indifference to the comparably small amount of Christians in Nigeria that have died because it can benefit us politically.
I actually disagree. I feel like that even though the Trump administration has tried to make it a thing, I would argue that there's an enormous amount of indifference to what's happening.
But not amongst the ruling class, right? They sanction Nigeria because of it. The ruling class is quite in tune to what makes them money, right? This is my point.
No, go on.
They'll do what makes the money. There's a reason we fund Saudi Arabia, right, in their mass slaughter Yemenis. Right?
Why do you think you think we're making funny? You think we're making money by sanctioning Nigeria?
Do I think we're making money by not specifically by sanctioning Nigeria, but specifically by pressuring the Nigerian government to expand American oil actions? Yes.
Okay, but I think the sanctions largely came after we were upset with Islamic extremism towards the Trump administration believed towards Christian groups, even though we both agree the vast majority of those deaths were actually Muslim.
So, for example, why do you think we're bombing Yemen? Do you have an economic understanding of why we're bombing Yemen?
If we shift to different parts of the world, I might agree with you more that there's an economic incentive. I'm saying in Nigeria specifically, I don't think that that's the motivating factor.
I do.
It's more ideological.
I do. I think almost immediately prior to the Christian nationalist uptick in interest in Nigeria, which was around 2017, if you've been following this story for a while, Nigeria moved to tax and nationalize certain portions of the oil industry.
Yeah, but I would argue that the shift didn't happen in 2017. It happened when this current government came to power, which has much more ideological There's even because I would argue it's more ideological than economic. I know you're a Marxist, so you're going to think everything's economic, but I think this is a much more ideological.
That's not an accurate understanding of Marxism, right?
Many things are economic then.
Not really. I engage in counter propaganda. I think ideology. I need to understand ideology, and there's a place for ideology in the material analysis.
So you disagree then that it's overwhelmingly ideological? The recent emphasis has been placed on Nigeria.
So let me make a more precise claim. That's more helpful. Okay. Let's say I think if there was a sufficient material reason to not do it, right, the ideology would contort itself to not do it. Right. So I think the first mover is material, largely, and I think the actual effect can largely be affected by material interests. So I think it is currently in the interest of the American bourgeoisie to put pressure on Nigeria. I think every Nigerian would tell you this, that there is a consistent pressure from America to not nationalize, to not tax the oil, and that is why America, along with France, or really through France, have effectuated coups in Nigeria.
I think if you ask government officials right now what the pressure is right now, they would say it's on to crack down on groups like Al Qaeda affiliates that currently exist in the northwest portion of that country. They would say that that's where most of the pressure is.
Yeah, that's their internal understanding. My point is, if
did it wrong? They don't actually understand what the pressure is.
Well, famously, Hitler didn't understand the economic things that led to his rise. Right, there were complicated systems that led to not fascist rise historically.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you believe, because pressure is less effective if you don't understand why you're being pressured. We're talking about different kind of pressure. We agree that somebody might not understand the context that exists in their political rise. That is a different thing. That if a government is actively trying to pressure someone into doing something, if they don't understand what the give is, that's not going to be very effective pressuring.
Maybe on the specific level, but my point is a little broader than that, which is very simple counterfactual. Don't take this as the whole argument. If, for example, the Nigerian obsession that Trump has, right, which it is an ideological obsession, that's true. Internal of Trump, he's stupid. I think we can all recognize Trump's stupid. Trump doesn't really know what he's doing. Stephen Miller does, right? Like, I think Stephen Miller knows this context. But the Trump obsession, if the Trump obsession toward Nigeria didn't make billionaires money, the Heritage Foundation or Stephen Miller or some other, arbiter of capital would come in and be like, hey, stop, don't do that, right? And we've seen that happen, right? Where fascists and far right wingers that are avatars of ideology have had discussions with avatars of capital, and it has worn them down. It has moved them away from that point, right? And this is a good way of understanding international politics. And now I'm just arguing the general pro of Marxist understanding of international politics. But I think it's defendable, especially in comparable examples like Yemen, right? There's a clear economic benefit to bombing Yemen, but then there's a secondary ideology, democracy, demonizing the Houthis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We built up this whole ideology, but both you and I can see with clear eyes, right? It's to protect the Strait. Would you disagree with that?
Yes, I agree. I am a little curious. Do you think that demonizing the Houthis is a negative thing? Do you think that they are?
It's not about it in the abstract being negative, right? I think there's what I'm pointing to is I think there's a reason the empire demonizes the Houthis and not the Saudi government.
But sure, I agree. But what I'm saying is that we both agree, yes, there's enormous economic interest about the Red Sea. Now, notably, actually, and we saw this actually in the Signal chat that was leaked with the deliberations in the Trump administration. And they were even actively talking sort of about what you're saying, but they were saying, we don't see sufficient economic interest, but we are still doing this.
Yeah, well, fascists, understood from a Marxist view, threaten capital in the short term.
Fascists understand threaten capital in the short term. But what I'm saying is that what we saw in the Signal chats is they were saying we aren't seeing the pressure from capital. Like they didn't use that verbiage, but JD Vance explicitly said, "Why are we even doing this? This is of no economic interest to us. Very little of our trading."
And then Trump went on to do it? Question mark? Is that just the context in which you're speaking? Explicate your point.
Yeah, the point that I'm making is that in this instance with the Red Sea, they were bombing the Houthis, even though they were internally saying, what is even the economic point of this? Like, we're not doing this for economic.
Yeah, that's what I just said. They were doing it that's a divergence between fascists ideologically and capital moving, right? And that's, there's always an ebb and flow. Like when Marxist analysis includes a space for an inertia of ideology, right? And an understanding of fascism as the ultimate.
Yeah. Well, then we don't disagree. We don't disagree if we're just saying that wealthy people at times can exert influence. They can exert disproportionate influence, and sometimes they'll get their way.
But I would say so. This is an attack on you. You're a liberal. This is an attack on liberalism. I wouldn't say wealthy people. I would say the system of capital, right? And there is a meaningful difference between that in what you're saying and how you're saying it. And there's a reason you say wealthy people and I say the system of capital. But as to your critique regarding the USSR, do you not understand the point that Hassan made, and pretty much every respectable leftist ever makes, from Parenti to even Noam Chomsky? Although
that's not true. Noam Chomsky famously said that the fall of the Soviet Union was the greatest victory for socialism ever.
Noam Chomsky agreed with Parenti on the life expectancy point. He had some delusional anarchist nonsense about, yes, I'm right. I was about to qualify that statement with Noam Chomsky being a dipshit that, I'm glad that everyone's on the same page about how much Noam Chomsky sucks, by the way. Thank God, right? The Epstein picture did a number on him. But the vast majority of respectable leftists recognize this, that it did act as an external pressure against America. And do you not see largely for example, the Iraq War or the invasions of Afghanistan and the catastrophes that happened there happened because of a non-multipolar world that happened because of the fall of the USSR?
I disagree pretty extremely with that, right? I would actually argue that during the Cold War, we actually saw the United States make a bigger push to supporting malign actors because they could be justified as being anti-Soviet, right? I think that, for example, we backed a coup in Brazil in, I believe it was 1960, to overthrow like frankly, a vaguely center-left, and even socialist or Marxist, like center-left. We backed his overthrow, a military overthrow. We had the military. You read the Jakarta Method. What am I saying?
Read the book.
Anyway, but when Bolsonaro is pressuring the Biden administration to help him with a coup against Lula, we didn't do that. And I think one of the reasons, if that same dynamic played out in the Cold War, we would have carried it out. But I think without the big looming threat of the Soviet Union, we are less likely to support malign actors like that.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. So I would also point to, I have another example. Also, apartheid in South Africa, and we're both going to agree the United States very shamefully backed the apartheid government in South Africa. But I think once the Soviet Union fell, I don't think it's a coincidence that is when the United States flipped.
Maybe, only insofar as, I mean, we ended up, through Israel, once again, tacitly supporting Rhodesia in complicated ways, and like ongoing.
We both agree that's bad, but Rhodesia fell like while the while the Soviet Union still existed.
I think there are complicated, I think the nuances with South Africa, especially with like the relationship we now have with Afrikaners, is interesting.
But I would argue that's ideological.
So we're going to agree that fascists themselves as people are largely ideologically driven actors.
Okay.
That is the Marxist analysis, right? Is that they are, as people, ideologically driven. We just think fascism is a kind of immune response of capitalism generally. I think that's an interesting argument. I don't think it actually shows up with reality. Once again, mainly with Iraq. With like now Iran, we didn't see that play out generally with the Middle East as a whole, Arab Spring, how we helped support coups across the Arab Spring in Egypt, in Tunisia, right?
Wait, what? Hosni Mubarak and Ben Ali were U.S.-backed dictators. We were
and
against
we
those
helped support the coup against them as well at the end.
Were you against the overthrow of Mubarak and Ben Ali?
Wait, I'm just pointing out that we did coups.
Look,
I don't need to support the people they were couped against. Do you support the current state of Egypt that was installed by the Arab Spring?
It wasn't the Arab Spring that installed El-Sisi. El-Sisi was a reversion against the Arab Spring.
It was a consequence of the Arab Spring.
I disagree. What we saw,
you should read Vincent Bevan's second book, If We Burn, about this point.
I would argue that the Arab Spring was a temporarily emancipatory moment in Egypt. Unfortunately, the liberal factions couldn't get their act together. The Muslim Brotherhood was elected, and then too much of the population coalesced around just El-Sisi overthrowing Morsi. But I would you disagree with that? You don't think that?
No, I think that's so. Once again, there's a whole book on it. It's called If We Burn. It's by Vincent Bevans. Y'all should read it. Very complicated. There's this larger critique on, I think those movements, if not initially, very quickly got co-opted by external foreign powers to help support, and to Brazil, right? Once again, Vincent Bevans was a Brazilian correspondent, so we randomly have a lot of knowledge on Brazil. The Arab Spring in Brazil was either feckless or a reactionary force as well to help install a more right-wing government in Brazil. Similarly, in I need to not read the comments. People need to not comment. But similarly in like Bahrain, where that was like reacted to by Saudi Arabia, and similarly in Tunisia, it led to a less democratic government. In Tunisia, it did. And in
what I would argue Tunisia is like the lone, like if you could possibly say there was any success story that came out of the Arab Spring, Tunisia is like the only possible issue.
With Tunisia right now? Tunisia's international.
No, not Tunisia right now, but
exactly. We have hindsight.
But they had the most success for the longest period of time.
Yes, but that long period of time ended predictably.
Okay, we can say predictably, but I would still say that it was but that's why I would say it was an emancipatory moment. It was a chance at overthrowing autocracy. It was a chance,
of which zero turned out, right?
We agree. Look, trust, we both agree the Arab Spring failed. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And the Arab Spring, largely was co-opted by certain factions within the American foreign powers. So that's the thing is, I think my best response to you, which it's an interesting point because there was a lot more. We first of all have a lot more released data on. So there's kind of a selection bias here. We have more released data on the Cold War subterfuge than we do modern subterfuge. So it's hard to say. But of what we do right now, things just got a lot more complicated and a lot more wink-winky. And with the Arab Spring, those perfectly well could have been revolutions against American-backed dictatorships, and then they were co-opted into very feckless, irrelevant revolutions against that ended up reinforcing Western power in that area. So I don't find that compelling. What is certainly compelling is like domestic labor protections, which have gone down, and American expansionism through Israel, which is massively ramped up with basically no opposition.
But to start with, and I think that I don't want to get too caught up in the Egypt part, so I might not even respond to that part. Do you think that we wanted Morsi to come to power?
Specifically, what? In Egypt, are you speaking?
In Egypt, you think we wanted him to come to power over Mubarak?
I think we didn't want socialists to come to power, and I think we were more interested in the Muslim Brotherhood coming to power, right? And then the revisionary happening, right? Then we were in a socialist government happening. This is what we consistently did. This is what we did in Iran.
It's been a little bit since I looked at. We were going to agree about Iran. It's been a little bit since I looked at the election results in Egypt after the Arab Spring. I feel like the socialists were not even close to the top of the ticket, like in terms of outcomes.
So we were given a choice. Yeah.
No, but there were more liberal. It's my understanding that the liberal factions, if they had coalesced, they would have had a larger share than the Muslim Brotherhood. But because there was too much factionalism.
Yeah, I don't think we wanted the liberals to win.
You think we wanted the Muslim Brotherhood to win?
More than the liberals. Yes.
Really?
America.
Okay.
Wait,
right.
This is why America, like in Iran, like take Iran for example. This is precisely what we did in Iran. Right? We didn't want the Pan-Arabists to win.
But that was in the Cold War. They wouldn't be
Pan-Arabism to win in Iraq.
Okay, I thought you were referencing Mossadegh. We're getting too mixed up with the names. But regardless, yes. I want to go back to what we were saying a second ago with Israel. I would also argue, and maybe you'll agree with this, because I remember actually a video I saw of yours a long time ago I liked because you were pushing back on a lot of anti-Semitism with like people saying Israel controls everything. And you were saying we actually control Israel a lot more, which I like. Yeah. I appreciate that you give that pushback to the leftists because I think a lot of leftists are going astray on that right now. But would you argue that our support for Israel is almost purely a product of the Cold War? I would say that it is.
Maybe at the time, in a culturally specific moment, I think our continued support of it is a outgrowth of American Western imperialism because, and you can trust, and my citation for this is Kissinger. Henry Kissinger described it as a like chaos agent within the Middle East, specifically. And I think it is in our, it's in our factual interest to maintain a chaos agent in the Middle East.
I guess I would agree with you in this. I guess the point I was getting at is that even with our support for Israel, because you were talking about how the Soviet Union provided an effective counterbalance to us, I would argue that our initial very strong support of Israel came as we viewed them as a bulwark against Pan-Arabism and what we thought as Soviet influence in a lot of obviously Nasser's Egypt and these and so I think that's where the support came from. We both agree that's not where it is now. Now it's become much more solidified in a lot of other ways.
I would actually say if we go back and look at the record, the American empire was actually split on whether to support Israel for a series of like super mega internal political like complicated reasons.
Which time period are you talking about? Like in 48 or which time?
I'm talking about in 48.
Okay, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, like very originally.
Sure.
So do I think? So I'm more familiar with the modern political context of support of Israel. I think we go back maybe, I mean, Cold War fever was like the primary ideological function, maybe, but I'm not compelled, right? The Soviet Union initially supported Israel as well.
Exactly, but my evidence is that in 56, when Israel, France, and the UK invade Egypt, we back Egypt. We back their claims to the Suez Canal. We
primarily as a counterbalance to the... But that was because of the the ranking of like what we wanted. We wanted to undermine the French and British.
I agree. But then it is not until Nasser starts cozying up to the Soviet Union that we see Israel's victory in the 6-Day War, and then that's when we start supporting them very heavily in 73. And so that's why I'm saying that just to go back to your point about the Soviet Union was this like great counterbalance. Well, I would actually argue
it wasn't a great counterbalance. It was any counterbalance. Sorry, like let me be very clear. I don't think it was. I think it's actually like this American delusion that they offered an equal and opposite counterbalance to America, and that might be what you're pointing to. I think they offered any counterbalance to limit any American aggression, right, and especially to expand the American social safety net, right? Like I think they are largely like if we're talking about internal, they did expand the like.
In foreign policy, I think it led to a more aggressive American posture. If the Cold War was not happening, I don't think we would have seen as aggressive as a posture. And that's why I do that. And I know you want to make the point where, like, well, we don't have the CIA documents to say as many coups, but like we can just.
I think that's a solid point that like we need to limit our point to.
But we can like see in Latin America there are less coups happening. Like there just aren't as like.
Can we see the intervention that we've done in Argentina to get the current leader?
But that's not the same thing. I trust me. I understand what you're saying. But Milei was.
What about the current Ecuadorian leader as well, or Venezuela?
Wait a minute. The first. Oh gosh, I'm going to forget his name. The current leader in Ecuador. He was a Rafael Correa.
I'm talking about Bukele. I don't know if he's Ecuador. No, he's El Salvador. Sorry, I'm talking about Bukele.
We didn't put Bukele in power at all.
We don't know that we didn't help. That's my point.
Well, I don't think we. Why would you say that we put? Why would you say we put Bukele in power though at all?
No, I'm saying like American foreign policy. I'm thinking of allies to the American empire currently. American foreign policy could have an influence, right? We don't have a good reason to, just as we didn't have a good reason to know that half of Operation Condor happened. But I'm not asserting it as a fact. You have to understand my point in the context I made it.
I just if you look in the Cold War, like it was like 90+% of Latin America was controlled by U.S.-backed military juntas. That is not the case right now. And I think that
most of them claim to be democratic, right? You understand that, right?
But they weren't. They were military.
But you only have that data because of American CIA released documents.
I disagree. Wait, which country are you? You're saying people didn't know that like Somoza was a dictator?
No, they knew that Somoza was a dictator, right? Just as we recognize that Bukele is a dictator.
Wait, no, I would argue Somoza is a different kind of dictator. But like, wait,
different kind,
you're saying something different. I'm saying at the time, if you were alive in 1980, you wouldn't have thought, oh, all those countries in Latin America, they're all democracies.
No, I think a liberal might have.
I don't think so. No, I disagree.
I'm sorry, people thought that Honduras was when America invaded and installed a new government in it.
Which year are we talking about?
Oh, fuck. When was the Honduran? During intervention by America. When we literally...
Are you talking about in 2008? Because I don't think we had troops in 2008.
No, I'm talking about 1963. If memory... am I talking about this person? Yeah, Arello. Oh. People thought that was a liberatory democratic installation. Against a crazy commie dictator.
No, I think that's a different thing. I think you could make that case about like Panama, but I think
to Honduras. You don't think if you asked an everyday American, especially an everyday American liberal, if they thought Honduras was a democracy following the fall of the following the fall of the communist dictator, they would say, it's more or less democratic.
I think they would have thought it's a strong man, but that it's a more pro-America strong man.
I mean, they claimed they took from the rank and file of the party.
Wait, the rank and file of which party? The party that was currently in power? I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this. There were a lot of interventions in Latin America. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert.
So if we're going to draw really wide strokes here, I think you're wrong. I think most American liberals would think. Well, yeah, I'm going to be as direct, obviously, and you think I'm wrong. That's okay. And I think you're incorrect, right? I think most Americans would have thought that more or less America's interventions were democratic. And I think by and large, the popularization of the idea that everyone would have known this and America just feels bad and has changed is a part of American propaganda that is supporting American imperialism today.
Okay, all right. So just my claim is that at the time, contemporaneously, I think there were a lot of people that thought that there were strongmen, dictators that we were backing, but that they were preferable to Soviet influence. I think that would have been the common belief at the time. Now, I'm not saying in every instance there weren't people that thought, okay, for example, in El Salvador, people thought Duarte was a Democrat, which obviously he wasn't. I'm not saying there weren't exceptions to that, but I do think there were a lot of, for example, it's not an exact comparison, but nobody. I won't even bring it. I was going to say the Gulf, but you agree, nobody today has any delusions that the Gulf is democratic, obviously, even though they're very allied with the West. We recognize it.
I understand what you're saying. I still think you're wrong, but I understand what you're saying. Well, because I've read American propaganda from that time, right? And they said specifically in Honduras is the one I'm most familiar with, even though I'm not fucking remember the name of it. They said they had an election. Right? They claim to have an election. For example, what else am I thinking? Was it Belize? Maybe it was Nicaragua. where were the Sandinistas were in Nicaragua, right?
Yeah.
Nicaragua had an election, but then the largely socialist government that was elected in was sanctioned, and then they had an election, and an American strongman was installed. Americans would believe that is a democracy, right? And like, so I can certainly say during that time, because it was, right? There was just American intervention in that case, right?
Well, I guess, but just to bring it back to where I think this originally came from, because let's say for the point, I disagree with you, but I will concede in the sense that, do you think that that's what's happening today? Like, do you think Brazil is not a democracy today?
I'll state my point very simply again, which is I think we do not know like sufficient amount about. Let me make the really broad statement that's like premised. I think American foreign intervention never went down. I think we've increased American foreign intervention. I think we've increased American like subterfugal foreign intervention.
Okay, I think there are definitely regions where I would say that is absolutely decreased, and I think Latin America would be the prime example of that. And I don't think that we can just say,
just very clear, even as of this year.
No, obviously, I'm not saying there's been zero. Obviously, we're talking about Maduro. I'm not saying there's been zero,
including this year. Over the past 20 years, do you think it's gone down?
Yes, I'm saying if we look at the last 20 years compared to any 20 years, compared to any 20 years in the Cold War, I would say the United States was much more prominent in backing dictators or overthrowing governments in Latin America.
I think that would be hard. I think that would also be in contradiction to what was read, at least in the second book by Vincent Bevins, where we did help support reactionary forces in Brazil. But I think your claim has some point, which is we did stop. We changed our. I'd say we changed our tactics. I think that would be my read of your point, which is fine. Like, we don't have explicit American-backed dictators anymore. I don't think if you go back, they would have been as open about it. But I think we changed our tactics to largely what Lenin predicted with the IMF in a much more large, expansive extent that cements and maintains American intervention in a way that we don't have to do a coup in the same way. I still stand by. I think most Americans would have thought they're democratic. But I think you're hitting at a point of truth, which is that there is less apparent American-backed strongmen, which is fine.
I think we know more about these countries. Like, we have more access to information about what is taking place in these countries than the average person in 1960 would have. Like, would you agree? We are able to have more access to people on the ground in all of these countries than we would have back in 1960. Where people were reliant on the New York Times, people were reliant on,
by definition, I give you the base. Do you yourself know more about what's happening in Burkina Faso than someone would 20 years ago? Like, let's just take that example for a second. Like, do you, Carl, think that you know more about what's happening in Burkina Faso than an average person reading New York Times 30 years ago would?
Well, okay, we're talking about New York Times, but I probably know a little bit more. I mean, you don't think we do?
Do you? Do you feel like you do?
Probably. I mean, but just by knowing, I know the leader of Burkina Faso. That probably puts me.
You know the leader, that he was covered in the New York Times. What else do you know about it?
I know about his attempts. Frankly, I know about his crackdowns on supposed Islamists that have led
the thing that was headed by the New York Times.
I read that in Amnesty International. I didn't read that in the New York Times.
Okay, we would have access to Amnesty, like publicly. Amnesty was a company releasing publications.
I disagree. I don't think that you.
I'm just limiting your point. I agree. I agree.
I'm not paying for any of this information. People back then were paying for that information, so it was a much smaller section of the public.
Well, we're paying for media overarchingly more now. Shout out Netflix. But besides the point, I think you hit on a point of truth, which is we have more access to information. I think that doesn't undermine my point, right? Which is that propaganda and hiding and subterfuge are still a extraordinarily powerful force. What I think might be true, and what might be a concession on my point, is I think a lot of that pressure happened openly now, because of how comfortable America has been being a hegemon, right? America is very happy to openly do a sanction against Burkina Faso or a sanction against or a direct intervention into Venezuela because they know nothing's going to happen. They can strangle Cuba because they know nothing's going to happen, right? So we
were strangling Cuba all throughout the Cold War. The whole reason we were strangling Cuba is because of the Cold War.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Absolutely.
But that is my...
Bomb a Russian oil tanker? No. Would we have? Would we like? Would we have?
My
Yes.
point, though,
Now,
is that the Soviet Union, the anti-Soviet sentiment, was used as the motivating principle for a huge percentage of our innovations. And I
but we
agree
just
that
replaced
obviously
that with anti-Arab sentiment.
I disagree. Well, obviously, so to a certain extent, obviously, we have more intervention in the Middle East today than we did during the Cold War. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, it's hard to weigh those, right? Like, I think we're right in that, like, okay, like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia,
those are-
and Korea
those
by
are
numbers.
Those are much larger than what took place in Iraq, or definitely Iran.
Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, and Palestine.
Yes, I mean we have like, yeah.
I mean, like, sure, in the space and time in the past 20 years, right? If we're counting,
and that's even adjusting for the fact that population has grown today. But it's my understanding, at least.
wait,
The death toll in Indochina, my understanding, is larger than modern. Now, maybe you're probably going to take very high estimates for some of the death tolls in the Middle East, but I still
I'll take
think
high
that
estimates for
death
that.
toll-
I don't have any kind feelings towards what America did during Vietnam. I'm genuinely interested.
That's fair. Well, because I mean, the death toll in Vietnam isn't around like 3 million investment, and that's just in Vietnam.
Why is that? Oh my god, this is so evil. Personnel, 3 million were put out. I mean, it's a ridiculous number, right? Because we bombed the whole entire country. And Vietnam was also over 20 years. Okay,
Sure.
so this whole time,
Sure.
right?
But sure, if it takes the last 20 years.
Civilian deaths in Vietnam War per whatever the fuck this is. It's Wikipedia. Total deaths 1.3 mil. That's the total deaths.
Okay, that's lower than what I would expect. I guarantee if you look at the Iraq War, it's going to be a lot lower than that. On if you're going by Wikipedia, I guarantee it's going to be lower.
Yeah, no, it is. It's about 750,000. Yeah, if memory serves.
I think Wikipedia puts it a lot lower than that. I think that there's like people like I've heard like estimates around like 200, 300, 400,000, but it depends like what time period you're looking at. If you're counting like the ISIS period as well.
Yeah, so we have Cost of War Project puts it at between 268,000 and 295,000. This one puts it, the opinion research business puts it at 1,033,000. And then the United Nations, oh, that's only in 2006. That's inaccurate. Lancet study puts it at 650,000. The PLSO medical study puts it at 460,000 excess deaths, which is slightly different than violent deaths. But the Vietnam War included excess deaths. Hard to say. I don't think this is a fun game for anyone. And I think, once again, like if my point was Syria, but also, Palestine.
But also we had during that time, Indonesia, East Timor, like we saw massive, like we saw, yeah. Like
we have Palestine, we have Yemen, we have Sudan, like we have Congo, like 3 million people have been murdered in Congo, which America is complicit in through its companies.
No, I'd say that's the huge difference between the death toll in the Vietnam War, where we're actively bombing Vietnam, and accounting like just every death that's taking place in the Congo. Like I don't think that's the same thing at all.
I mean, if it's attributable to like an American-backed regime.
Well, no,
we're
because
complicit.
I would argue. Well, no, because we're making like a causal argument. Are we claiming that if the United States wasn't in the Congo, that there'd be no deaths in the Congo? I think if we hadn't invaded Vietnam, there would have been a lot less deaths in Vietnam.
Yeah, but there would be a lot less deaths in Congo as well if America didn't exert influence over Congo. Yeah, 100%.
No, okay.
Do you know the causal relationship between the American and Western Empire in Congo?
I agree. Wait, okay, but see, you're expanding it. I don't disagree. King Leopold killed tons of people in the Congo. I'm talking about the United States in the Congo today. What do you think is happening in the Congo today is equivalent to us bombing Vietnam?
So more people have died in the Congo within the past 10 years due to conflict than in Vietnam over 20 years.
But not from U.S. action, though.
No, I know, but I don't think you understand the relationship between the American empire and its pressure and its economic system that it has forced upon all of the global South and Congo. Do you know what's happening? Do you know the causal relationship between Congo?
Do you think we forced Paul Kagame to invade Eastern Congo?
So no, but I think we supported I think we supported like Rwanda in trafficking arms to.
I know Paul Kagame. He's the leader of Rwanda. He went in there because he was trying to go after Hutu militias in eastern Congo.
Rwanda, who has a direct trade relationship with the UK.
I'm sorry. Are we the UK? That's not.
Yes,
I'm saying.
Yes, we control the UK.
We do not control the UK.
Yes, we do. That's what NATO is, my friend.
NATO is not us controlling the UK. If we control the UK, why aren't they in Iran with us? I think if you ask
the UK if we control them, they'll say, yes, we have a special relationship. That special relationship is do whatever the fuck we say. When we tell them to invade Iraq, what do they say? Yes, sir, give me another. Right? When we tell them to invade Serbia, they say, yes, sir, give me another. When we say, hey, guys, your Cyprus is going to get hit, what do they say? Yes, sir, give me another.
Why aren't they in Iran right now?
Why aren't they? Sir, they are. We use their bases to refuel.
That's not okay. That's a different thing.
That's complicity. If I let my base be used by the Taliban, you would think it's complicit.
You are so changing what you said. You said that we control the UK. Mm-hmm. That's a different thing. Because if we control the UK, why aren't they in it with us like they were in Iraq?
Sorry. So let me be very clear about like the overarching relationship here. They are a periphery state. They are a periphery state of the American empire. Their exertion of economic power is directly relational to the American and Western empire. There is a relationship there, right? Just as, by the way, there's a relationship between America and Saudi Arabia, right? But I would say the relationship between America and Saudi Arabia is one of control, right? And
I would argue we have much more control over Saudi Arabia than we do over the UK.
So we can understand this. So why are they not? Why have we not pressured the UK to engage into the war in Iran in the same way that we have the war? What pressures have we put on the UK?
Trump is threatening to withdraw from NATO.
Okay,
is that not a huge pressure?
Not to help do the thing that would contribute to withdrawing from NATO. That's a violation of trust to join us in our wars. The relationship between these is one of economic mutual benefit.
I'm saying that Trump is attempting to exert influence on the European countries that aren't helping in Iran, and his way of trying to exert influence is saying we are going to withdraw. He's also threatened to stop
ending an allyship is not pressure to enter an allyship.
That is pressure. If you say, because right now we have a mutual defense agreement with the UK. If we say if you don't help us, we are not going to help defend you anymore, that would be pressure.
Not if I'm a fascist that would never defend them anyway.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can I give some background why I think this is obvious and I'm surprised that you disagree? Leftists see fascists as the like ending and contraction of an empire.
Do you think Keir Starmer's not a fascist though?
No, he doesn't. That has nothing to do with my point. I would never suggest that's not what I said.
But that's what I'm saying. Trump is trying to pressure Keir Starmer into, not just Keir Starmer, but the entirety of Europe into entering the war with Iran. And one of the ways that he's trying to enact that threat, obviously he also threatened to stop selling weapons to Ukraine. But the other thing he threatened was to withdraw from NATO. That is pressure.
So let me just, okay. So the conversation between an imperial liberal in the imperial core and an imperial liberal in the imperial periphery is, hey, I have an economic system that really benefits you, and I will allow it to continue to really benefit you for the next foreseeable future if you help me out in this war. They go, yes, sir, yes, daddy. Between a fascist and a peripheral liberal, they go, hey, fuck you, I'm a nationalist, I hate you and your country, I'm going to fuck you over no matter what you do, could you please help me in this war? They go, you can just use my ports because you still have a shit ton of money. That isn't in contradiction to my view. That's just an understanding of the difference between Obama, right, as a liberal and as a neoliberal maintaining empire, and Trump as a fascist that is in the dying death throes of empire.
Okay. I feel like this is just not pivoted because we're still on the same topic, but this has just shifted so far away from what the original claim was. The original claim was the UK will do whatever we want. And I said, if they'll do whatever we want, why aren't they in Iran with us? You said, well, we're not pressuring them going to Iran. I said, we are pressuring them by threatening to withdraw from NATO. And you said, that's not pressure.
I've just explained to you the relationship.
And then you give me this little puppet show about
Do you understand the puppet show?
The puppet show is not showing control. The claim is that the control...
No, so here... Do you want me to, like... I made a one sentence that you're asking to explain everything, right? I'm saying it's more complicated than the one sentence I said, and I'm adding nuance. Forgive me that a one sentence isn't sufficient. Yes, the relationship between America, the empire,
But
and
this all started
the
because
UK,
you were
the
saying that.
peripheral state is. Now,
But this all started because you're saying we were culpable for what the UK does. That's
Okay,
why we even
folks.
started talking about the UK. That's why we even started talking about it.
Okay, folks. So let me try to simplify this. I believe that the UK is an expansion under the current economic system, and more so, it's more true if you go within the past 10 years. Trump really has destroyed this. You make a good point. Trump has crushed a lot of the points within the American empire. But my point is that until we cut the economic ties, right, and the systems of control, i.e. the overarching imperial capital system that is holding them together, we hold culpability for their actions. At the very least, because we maintain a beneficial economic relationship with them. Now, as to my comment about control, it wasn't necessary to that point, but it is insofar as they are acting as an empire, as a liberal empire, right, which is what the puppet show was for, which is liberals understand how to maintain power with an empire. Fascists are a reaction to the fall of an empire. Now, you can say, okay, well, that means they don't really control it. Cool. I've clarified to a sufficient, point. I think you understand the point.
Okay. I understand. The whole reason that we even went down this path, though, is we were talking about U.S. aggression post the Cold War and during the Cold War.
And I'm talking about the current slaughter in Congo and the past 10 years, 20 years of Congo slaughter.
Okay. If we're going to talk about that, though, I'm saying that Kagame's government is not the same thing as our bombing of Vietnam.
No, I never said it was.
But you are, because I'm saying we were more aggressive during the Cold War, and you're saying no. You're saying we're equally aggressive. Actually, you said we're more aggressive today, didn't you?
So
we're more equal.
I think we are. I think we have exerted more force across the world, right, through either direct lethal intervention or indirect, sometimes lethal, often unlethal, economic control. We have done a higher level of extraction. And one of the good examples of this we brought into Congo, right? And this is the thing, is we've done less direct. I don't know. It depends how you do the calculus on the Middle East, especially Middle East across Northern Africa. But another strategy we have is economic support and economic sanction. And one of the complicated, and one of them is bureaucracy, by the way. This is why this gets so complicated, is because they actively try to fill it in with really complicated bureaucratic things. But America, right? If America didn't want Britain to have a special relationship with Rwanda, which it does, right? Do you know about the British relationship with Rwanda?
Sure, they're very close, yes, and they've even taken deportees that aren't even from Rwanda.
So would you agree that because of that relationship, Britain is culpable for the actions of the Rwandan government?
I say they're more culpable than we are.
Sure. So I would say they're sufficiently culpable for me to say they're culpable, and I would say because of the amount of economic power and economic benefit that America gives to the UK, we share culpability for that because of the but-for, we could stop them from doing it.
Okay, but my claim, because I feel like this is maybe the disagreement. I'm not disputing that you can make a long chain of connection to a lot of actions around the world, particularly today because the United States is so large, so powerful, we're much more of a hegemon, right? But the specific claim that I thought we were disputing was particularly whether aggressive actions by the United States have gone up or down as a result of the fall
I think
of the
our ongoing support of the UK, which is culpable of genocide in Congo, is an aggressive action.
I'm talking about I don't know what the correct word for this would be.
I think your description of aggression is insufficient and unhelpful.
I'm talking about what I'm talking about though is aggression where the deaths would not be happening if we were not involved.
I think if America was not involved with the UK, giving it a privileged position in the world through its economic system, the deaths in Congo would be drastically reduced.
Why do you think that, though? You don't think Kagame has sufficient incentive to try and invade the
Why do you think
Congo?
Rwanda has economic supremacy over portions of Congo?
Well, because honestly, the Congo doesn't have a very strong sovereign.
Why do you think Rwanda, following a genocide, has been able to establish a stronger sovereign than Congo?
Because the Congo is a much, much larger. It's effectively what we're seeing is a battle between Kanashi and Rwanda, with a huge gap in the middle of two powers that are effectively trying to create a sovereign.
Yes. So why do you think one has been more successful than the other? I would say it's because of their relationship with the imperial core.
Well, no, but if we look at it that way, though, I would argue that, like I said, if you're looking at just the competing powers between Rwanda and Kanashi, then you're seeing it like roughly equal. We see huge amounts of deaths on both sides.
Okay,
but when you're looking at it as
yes.
No, okay, so you're saying the United States doesn't exist. Then what do you think happens? Like
I would need to look into Kanashi's like systems of power. I know Rwanda's very well.
I think you would still see a massive civil war.
Where's Kanashi? Where do you understand where like Kanashi's base of power is?
Frankly, probably a lot of Western people as well. Both governments probably have.
Then we can accurately describe this as an intra-Europe, like intra-Western fight, which is perfectly in line with them expressing power, right? And like once again, if you I don't know if you know Kissinger's theory, right? What Kissinger thought the best situation was for the global South was consistent chaos, because that allowed. So let's take this. I don't know, and this is going more to me kind of like explaining the theorizing than actually the point of the Congo, because I can't speak on the specific base of power of the opposition with Congo. Within my model, they're generally just losing.
So do you think there wouldn't be fighting if the U.S. there would be no fighting in the Congo? Like, not to be too reductive, but like I think there would still be massive amounts of violence.
Here's I think the confusion. I'm really, really interested in explaining why fighting is happening. You're really, really interested in excusing America from that fighting. Like, I'm trying to describe the world order as it is.
Right?
I
don't think you are interested. I don't think you are interested, because my claim is that the fighting would still be happening, because I don't think the United States is the determining factor.
No, I mean, Rwanda would just simply not have the same money it has. We know that if, like, for example, if the UK chose randomly another country to support, Rwanda would not have that money.
Okay, but no, the Tutsis as an empowered faction has been the case in Rwanda for centuries at this point. It is not a product of the United States involvement. Now, if you want to try and say,
it's a product of Western involvement largely.
But that's a different thing, though. That's a different thing. If you want to say that the Belgians propped up the Tutsis as an empowered class in their colonial domination of Rwanda, okay, yeah, I agree. But that's a different thing than saying the United States is the current cause of the fighting that took place.
Once again, like, reality is complicated, and I'm not trying to simplify it down to one cause. That's not my project.
It feels like that is your project, though.
No.
Okay, well then help me understand, though, why you are only saying that the United States and the UK are the cause.
Well, Rwanda is also culpable. So are the factions within Congo.
Okay, but that's my thing. I do think there would still be an enormous amount of fighting. Would it look exactly the same?
Sure.
Certainly not.
Whatever.
Okay, but
but the question, what I'm confused. The question is about Western culpability, and you're asking me, well, why are you only answering about Western culpability? Because that's what the question is.
Because I think the question is like reduction of violence, reduction of harm. I think that is.
Yes, I think if America, if the UK was not funding M23, there would be less genocide going on in the Congo. Yes, I can say that with certainty. And you know why I can say that with certainty? Is because that is the suggestion by almost every single international expert on this issue. The UK should cut off its relationship with Rwanda.
I don't disagree that we should. I wouldn't even disagree. From a tactical standpoint, I don't disagree that the UK's relationship with Rwanda.
But on a causal relationship, like, you can say, when you give arms to people that want to commit genocide, that will be happening. Now, the counterfactual, I think what you're pointing to, which is true but irrelevant, is the counterfactual is hard to construct, right? And have you ever read Frantz Fanon? Have you read Frantz Fanon's?
No, I need to read. I read to read Wretched of the Earth.
It might add some context to this, because what I think, once again, non-insult, you're just liberal, and I'm attacking liberalism. Liberals view the violence in the global South as inherent and not consequential.
I view this very consequential. I disagree completely with that.
But really? But your counterfactual would suggest that it's inherent.
Give the theory. Well, no. When we say inherent, what do we mean? I don't think there's inherent violence
outside of I view it as primarily a consequence. I think the reason, so like, if I look at the difference between why violence going on in my home state of North Carolina and, a state in Congo, you're massively more violence going on here. I think that is primarily an action of colonialism and ongoing neocolonialism. And you go, well, it would be happening regardless of colonialism. I don't think so. Right. I don't think so. Right. And I think it is I think that is a consequence. Maybe you not. I am certain that you subjectively do not believe that you have internalized like a racialized and a colonial caricature of the global South. But I think that's the only way we get to this point in the discussion where you're saying, well, what would happen but for what is objectively Western colonialism ongoing in Rwanda?
Because I think one of the biggest factors in this widespread violence is not just happening in the global South. Because a huge reason why people will change what they consider
is
to be
genocide happening in Scotland?
Wait. But was there previously a lot of genocide that happened in Northeast Asia? Would we agree that there was?
Was there a lot of genocide that happened in Ireland? Yes.
Okay, sure. But there's not anymore, right? Now, is it because there's no colonialism anymore? Is that why?
Northeast Asia? Yeah, like what are you talking?
Do you think that there's
Northeast Asia? Are you talking Mongolia?
No. I'm talking about like Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, like all these countries. Malaysia.
Okay, so there was a genocide that happened in Korea. I just think they were successful.
Okay. You're saying,
and there was a genocide that happened by Japan, and it retracted. So yes, it largely was because the culturally specific.
I know you're like trying to say it's like a gotcha. That's what I started with. I said we both agree that there were genocides happening in Northeast Asia, and now they aren't anymore. Yes, do we agree?
Okay, could you be more specific about which ones you were talking about? You talking about okay.
Well, frankly, I don't know if I used the word genocide. I was saying mass violence, but like there was mass violence and genocides happening in Eastern China. There are genocides happening in Korea. There's massacres happening in Japan. There were massacres happening in all these places, right? Whether they're genocides or not, there's massacres, right? And we both agree that they're not happening right now. Yes.
I mean, I would say there was. I think the existence of an ongoingly partitioned Korea and an ongoingly partitioned China is a form of systemic violence. But to the human scale you're talking about, no.
Okay. Yes, I'm talking about the level of violence that we
literally life is better. Yeah. I have an explanation for that. I'd be interested in what your explanation is.
Okay. I think it's because there have been strong sovereigns that have been created. There have been strong institutions that have been created. And there's been the allowance of individual rights, success, and shared prosperity where people can have democratic transitions of power. People, not in China necessarily, but even in China, you have a strong sovereign that's able to create prosperity. And I think that is one of the reasons why you have so much less violence taking place in that region right now.
And why do you think that happened?
I think it's a product of, frankly, some of it was the birth of the Cold War. But what do you think? Why do you think it happened?
So I think it's allowed to continue happening and was allowed to happen in the first place because largely those places were either, and by the way, where it hasn't happened, North Korea, which is continually oppressed by the West, which is why to better the answer, no, mass violence has not ended in China, Korea, and Japan because there's ongoing oppression of North Korea by the West. And I think the reason it's been allowed to happen in South Korea was because it was incorporated into the West. Japan was incorporated into the Western economy.
Do you think the North Korean government has any responsibility in that repression?
I think the North Korean government materially is largely a consequence of a siege by the West. Just as I think Congolese people,
even though Kim Il-sung was in power before the Korean War, you're saying he's the consequence of a siege by the West?
Before the Korean War, when it was being occupied by Japan,
the Soviets. No, the Soviets.
It was. So was it not under siege by Japan and America together through the?
You said that the Kim regime. You didn't say the Kim regime, but you said that.
I'm talking about modern day Korea.
You're saying and modern day Korea is the product of the Kim family's dynasty that was established, at least that came to power under the Soviet occupation.
Yeah, but the material conditions under which they live are not singularly contingent upon their founding. And by the way, life expectancy and life generally under the Kims compared to Japanese occupied Korea, right? Certainly better under the Kims than Japanese occupied Korea.
Compared to the South.
There wasn't the same South, my friend.
No.
Are you talking about America occupied South?
If you're saying that life expectancy is better under the current North Korean regime than it was under Japanese occupation.
No, that wasn't what I said. No, that was not what I said.
What do you say?
What I said was life expectancy under the Kim Il-sung dynasty, or the Kim Il-sung, right, or the communists in North Korea.
Okay.
Was better than Japanese occupied Korea, which it was the alternative to.
Okay, sure. And I'm sure that life expectancy was better in Ukraine under the Soviets than it was under the Nazis. That doesn't mean that the Soviets are Like,
Sure,
that's
why we're just kind of saying facts. I
I
think your argument wasn't actually a response to anything I said.
think
Because
my point.
because I understand. I understand your point from the point of view in which you're saying it, which is it is a consequence of the first of its regime that it is now. I'm saying the material conditions under which they live, i.e., the limited trade, the limited travel, the ongoing international pressure, the ongoing illegal sanctions, that are extraordinarily causal and largely explanatory for the state of life in North Korea. And to the larger premise that we were discussing, right? Why has South Korea specifically, Taiwan specifically, and Japan specifically, I'll explain first why I think those three have gotten better, because they've been incorporated into the West. They've been incorporated into the American empire. The South Korean army is directly respondent in times of emergency to the American Department of Defense. So if you think
that's why their life expectancy is better, is because their army is being helped by the U.S. government?
Could you try and strongman that a little more?
Try and strongman that. I understand that you're saying that obviously
strongman, steelman that a little more.
Steelman, your argument?
Yeah, because that was a nonsensical misunderstanding of what I said.
It wasn't a nonsensical misunderstanding. I agree that those governments have a lot of it in Taiwan to a lesser extent, but have a lot of integration into Western military structures. But I would argue that
do you think they benefit from the integration to our economy?
Well, I would say that is what they are primarily benefiting from. Yes, the Western integration. Because I don't even think you have to stop at those countries. Obviously, China has severely benefited from integration into Western economies. Would you agree with that?
So integration as well as sovereignty to some extent. I would say China falls further on it has forcefully expelled Western colonizers a lot more than, for example, South Korea, Taiwan, or Japan have. Right, so I would say one has done a lot more capitulation and integration, and one has done a lot more expulsion and independent power building.
From the point of view of prosperity, though, I'm saying that the prosperity was the result of integration into the West, with the West,
not for China.
Western economies.
Not for China.
Yes, with China.
No, that's no. I mean, not by any means. No.
Under Deng's reforms is where you saw the massive explosion in prosperity.
But that wasn't integration. That was That's first of all. We saw an increase in life expectancy prior to Deng. Second of all, Deng's reforms were not just integration, and certainly were not capitulation in the way that Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan were. And I think there's a material important difference between those two.
Some people thought that at the time, but regardless,
yes, they are wrong. Yes.
No, okay, but I'm saying that there were communist hardliners that very much disagreed.
We're asking an interesting question, which is helpful. Which is why are these areas stable and prosperous, right, and tolerable? And I have an explanation. Some capitulated to the Western Empire, some expelled them and built a power base outside of them. Now, if we compare that to the global South, right, so that's the second world, really. If we go to the third world historically, which is the Middle East and Africa as a whole, why are those places still forced to be unstable, right? And I would say they're largely forced to be unstable because of Western and largely economic intervention that profits from them being unstable. And I think Henry Kissinger agreed with me on this point.
So I'm saying that I think that these countries, because I think the ultimate goal, hopefully we would agree, is for these countries to be stable and to be prosperous. We agree with that, yes?
Well, I'd like the countries to not exist. I'm an anti-nationalist.
Okay, we want the people to be prosperous and stable. I'm also not a big fan of nationalism. I think we both agree that it's not going to happen in our lifetimes. But yes, the borders are a scar on the face of humanity. We agree. But that's not going to change probably anytime soon. But we would like those places. We would like the people there. Maybe we shouldn't talk about the country.
No, but can I just, before we get into this, sure. Because we both have, everyone in the world has short memories. Very specifically, the reason you brought up Northeast Asia was to compare it to Africa as to why there is stability. Okay? Your argument is that it had strong sovereigns and it had built up value sets. I'm kind of filling in.
Value sets, the institutions. Specific economic policies that allowed for prosperity.
Okay. Of strong sovereigns. And then your point as to why, do you and I agree, specifically on Japan, the reason they were able, let's take Japan versus Iraq, okay? Do you think the primary difference between Japan and Iraq was that one was allowed to prosper and actually benefited, like was actively intentionally built up by the West, and then one was actively torn down by the West. Do you think it's an accurate description?
Okay, I think that when we say actively torn down, do you think that the regime that took power in Iraq had anything to do with the enormous destabilization of it? You think that the Ba'athist Party, when they took power, do you think that had anything to do with the enormous damage that befell Iraq?
I think the Ba'athist Party partially took over because of Western intervention.
Okay, no,
but did you ask this about Japan?
I've seen evidence that there were like lists of communists that were given to the Baathists once they were already in power. I've never seen anything to support that we put the Baathists in power. Have you ever seen that?
Well, that's so not that we directly put them in. So that's not the causal relationship I'm suggesting. Okay. I'm suggesting that, for example, communists, right, were not taking power in Iraq largely because of American pressure. So,
well, no, I mean the Baathists took power in a coup. I mean, the communists theoretically could have also taken power in a coup.
Yes, and Iraq also received pressure from the communists that did take power, right? Which there were some. It's complicated, the money that was spread around, to not join the Pan-Arabists, which made them weaker to U.S. intervention. So once again, like, it's not just that we like go in, slaughter people, and put someone up, right? There's more complicated intervention that happens here.
But in Iraq, it wasn't West. Like I said, Saddam. Like early, obviously, we were backing Saddam.
Yes,
we were backing. Okay, but so you're claiming that it was the Western intervention, but we were actually backing him originally. But we would both agree that enormous tragedy befell Iraq while we were backing him. Yes.
Yes, but like okay, that, like also, but just to be clear, like. Yes, I'm confused about this. I made a very simple point that is so stupidly simple you should agree to it. Do you agree? Do you agree that American intervention helped cause the destruction of institutions? Simple point. Do you think America destroyed the Iraqi state?
No, I think Saddam Hussein destroyed the Iraqi state. Unless you're saying he was the Iraqi state.
That is a state, is it not?
Okay, he completely dismantled anything that resembled a functioning state with his power.
I mean, they had a post office, they had a military, like they had healthcare.
It was a totalitarian state. That killed.
So okay, cool. You can characterize it as whatever you want. That's fine.
But this is super important though. This is super important because your claim.
But we just need to start with reality.
No. Okay, let's start with reality. If your claim is okay, we were backing the South Koreans. That's why they got.
Can you answer my question as asked?
Wait. No. If you're saying the South Korea, that's why they got super powerful because we backed the dictator. Well, guess what? We also backed the dictator in Iraq. One went from being one of the poorest, most illiterate countries in the world to one of the wealthiest. Iraq went to being...
Wait, sorry, I didn't hear the first part of that sentence. Which are you saying became the wealthiest and most literate?
South Korea went from being one of the most illiterate countries in the world and went to being a very poor country to now being one of the wealthiest per capita countries in the world. Okay, and you're saying that's because we backed the regime there, yes?
I made a more complicated statement than that, which is that we actively built up, right, institutions, and they integrated into the West effect. And one second, pause. They integrated into the West effectively.
We completely agree then. Yes, I agree that is why South Korea benefited. Not because of Western meddling, but because institutions were built up that we helped them build up, and that they were allowed to integrate into the global economic system, right? So that you're stating that as if that's not active American meddling. It certainly is, and it involved the slaughter of a sixth of Korea. I'm talking. Okay, I agree that there were absolutely massacres that took place under Syngman Rhee.
The South Korean regime was built on blood, right? Just as much as the Saddam Hussein regime was. So
yes, but
you can write. You're not including that. I think is a bit impeaching.
One of them? No, but why is one of them incredibly prosperous today? And one of them is not incredibly prosperous today.
That's the core of this question, and I'm asking a sub-question.
No, wait, but is that not super important?
Do you want an answer?
Yes, that's why I just asked.
I've already answered this because the West invested heavily and built up institutions and allowed them to enter the Western economy. The other one, we built up institutions. Yes, we did not build up institutions.
What institutions did we build in Iraq?
The Ba'athist Party, my friend.
We did not build the Ba'athist Party.
No, we didn't support the Ba'athist Party in maintaining control.
We did not start supporting Saddam Hussein until he invaded Iran. He was literally on the state-sponsored terror list.
Stupid simple. Did we give resources to the Ba'athist Party?
Not until after Saddam Hussein
Yes
had
or no?
completely established. Not until after he had established control.
That's not the question.
We did not. We did. Did
That's
we
not my
build the
question,
Ba'athist?
Carl.
Did
That's not
we
my
build the
question. That's not the
In
question that was
19
asked.
in 1977, after the Ba'athists had been in power for, I think, decades at that point, had we built that institution?
So building is an ongoing act, right? What I mean by institution.
But I'm saying in 1977, when the Ba'athists had complete control of the Iraqi state, did we build that?
Did we? So I don't mean they created it. We did not create the Ba'athist institution. We did not build all power they ever held. It's not my claim. Can you answer the question as asked?
But they had been in power for over decades.
Carl?
You're saying we built them when they were already in power. They had already established a complete totalitarian
We
state.
also did not originate, right, the power structure in South Korea. There were pre-existing parties that we supported. That's how everything works, Carl. That's not my claim. Carl, so yes or no, did we give resources to the Ba'athist Party?
Yes, when they invaded Iran, yes.
There we are. Fantastic. So we helped build.
But that's how I started. I started by saying this.
I know. So,
okay, but we didn't build the Ba'athist regime. We gave them weapons to attack Iran.
I've been very clear about what I mean by build. So, like, just as you could say the exact same thing about South Korea. You understand that, right?
No, we did not. The support.
Were there pre-existing parties in South Korea that we funded?
No, the vast majority of the growth happened under Park Chung-hee, who took power in a coup after the Korean War.
Was there a pre-existing party in Korea that we funded as our proxy in Korea?
You mean during the Korean War? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I agree with that part.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're really stuck up on something I don't mean, and you're actively misunderstanding and wasting everyone's time. By build,
I'm wasting everyone's time. Okay.
Yeah, I actively mean, right? Build is to take something and make it bigger, right? Like if I, okay, is that fair?
How do we make the Ba'athist Party bigger?
By giving it a shit ton of weapons.
Okay, that didn't make it bigger. That just helped them attack Iran. They had already established complete control over Iraq. So once again, my point got interrupted halfway through. This actually doesn't matter to the point. But yes, funding something makes it bigger, my friend. Yes, funding something makes it bigger. If I give a bunch of weapons to the Black Panthers and they already have, a bunch of power over here, they got bigger. Yes, funding something makes something bigger. But that's besides the point, right? Because it was actually a concession to you to say we built up institutions in Iraq. I don't care. It doesn't matter at all. My point was, shush. 1 second. Give me 2 seconds, my friend. That's not a concession.
Please.
Okay.
My point was, you asked why was one successful and one was not. And I'm saying the primary difference is one was allowed to enter into the Western economy and one was not.
Yeah. It's not a concession to say that we built up institutions in Iraq, because my claim is that we didn't.
I don't care. This doesn't matter. You're wasting time. This doesn't matter.
Okay. Then the point that I'm making is, I think that we should give more autonomy to the government of Saddam Hussein. I think it's a huge part of why Iraq is the way that it is today. That's my claim.
Why? Because we gave autonomy to Saddam Hussein?
He was already in power. He'd already established.
Wait, I just want you to repeat your statement. I didn't hear you right then.
Okay. I'm saying that we should give more autonomy to the failure that we've seen in Iraq to the Ba'athist Party. That it wasn't us, it's the Ba'athist Party. They'd established a one-party state before we'd given them any weapons.
Cool. I'm happy to give a certain amount of blame to the Ba'athist Party. That has nothing to do with my point.
Because you were saying the reason that Iraq is a failed state is because of United States meddling. When I'm saying they were already a one-party totalitarian state before the United States meddled.
That has nothing to do with my point.
It does have to do with the point, because I'm saying...
Do you want me to explain to you why it doesn't have to do with the point?
And you're going to say, well, we helped them at some point, so that means we're culpable.
No, because there are multiple reasons for things.
Okay.
And so the fact that there's another reason has nothing to do with whether mine is also explanatory.
Do you think that the Iraq would have been...
Can I? You asked me a question. You asked me a few questions, and I've got an answer. Can I get an answer to you?
Sure.
So the Baathists, you're like, they're bad. They did bad things. They made a one-party state. I'd be intrigued. So what is your understanding of why they did? Why do you think they did?
When the Baathists established a one-party state? I mean, they were effectively a fascist regime. I mean, yeah, they were effectively fascist.
Why? Why do you think they came about?
It was like Arab supremacy. Or what do you mean by why did they come about? Like, how did they take power?
Like, what was the material reason for that particular ideology and structure of government coming about in post-colonial Iraq?
They overthrew the government that was previously more supportive of the British, if that's what you mean.
Okay, so like, why? So could that be related to Western colonialism? I'm not asking you to be defensive. I'm asking you to give an explanation, give a counter explanation.
I definitely think it's a bad thing that the British backed Faisal in Iraq. I think that there was. I think that absolutely led. Look, hopefully we've all read Elizabeth Thompson, How the West Stole Democracy from the Arabs. I completely agree that that there was not in Iraq, actually. Iraq was different, but in modern day Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, and most of that, there was a functioning institution, a functioning democratic state that was being established, and the French and the British crushed it, and partitioned it. We both completely agree with that. But that's sort of where my point comes from. Where strong institutions are what matters. Where those strong institutions were crushed by the imperialists in that case.
That's fine. This is the thing. We're talking on different scales. I think what you're doing, this is a teaching moment for liberals. I'm not trying to disagree with you necessarily, because we're playing on different points. You're trying to go through history and point through the ideas that worked. You're trying to say this idea, free speech, liberty, strong institutions, that works, right? What I'm trying to do, I think that's kind of your point that you're going back to, is you're going, look, this person had the right idea. They had a strong institution, right? They started giving liberties, and that built prosperity. Cool. Yes, and then, big bad colonialists, they went and destroyed that, right? And what I'm asking you to do, I think we can do that. And when I play on that game, I'm not going to disagree. I think, look, I'm a Leninist. I think a strong institution, I think that's great. I love strong institutions, right? So that's not the disagreement, my friend. What I'm saying is there's a lot of material reasons that certain strong institutions get power or don't get power, or they are not allowed to gain power from the West or are allowed to gain power from the West. And I think when we think about what happened in the Middle East or regarding Africa, right, or compared to South Korea or Japan, right, there was a reason that strong institutions, either dictatorial and authoritarian, right, which, like, by the way, Mexico went through a phase of having a one-state dictatorial authoritarian state. It got out of it. Why? Why did it get out of it? Largely because it couldn't be a direct threat of American imperialism due to a series of material reasons. So when I'm talking about this, there are multiple reasons. Sure.
You don't think it had anything to do with the end of the Cold War, which kind of supports my theory, where the democratization in Mexico was there was less pressure put on them by the Americans to maintain the PRI in power after the Soviet Union fell?
Yeah, I think that's outside. Cool. Great point. I think we can discuss that. I think we're going to waste our time here because I want to focus where we are right now in the discussion. I think it's really productive. But I'll concede on that. Good point, Slay. But to the point, which is there are a lot of complex material reasons. I'm really interested in those material reasons, and I think one of the largest actors within the past 20 years has been the American Empire, and I think they have used their power to, by and large, keep the Middle East undemocratic. I don't think there is a discontinuity between Western colonialism that stole democracy from the Middle East during the time of, the Shah prior. I don't think it was during the time, prior to, in Iraq, right, when we stole it to maintain Saudi Arabian dictatorship and Jordanian dictatorship and Qatari dictatorship to now. And I'm trying to draw that through line, and it doesn't have to be a smooth America's the only actor, right? I think there are multiple actors, especially prior to the fall of the Cold War and especially prior to World War II. All I'm saying is that South Korea, right, built on genocide. What?
I'm just saying that's not an interesting claim. Everybody agrees with that. Obviously, yes, we feel the legacies of colonialism today everywhere. Nobody would disagree with that, though. That's not a Marxist leftist point. The reason why I'm trying to get into the institutions and everything is because, like you said, you're Leninist, you are very pro institutions. I think we have a different idea of what institutions are going to be successful. That is the more interesting part, in my opinion.
So let me say, applied to modern politics, I think the institutions that are going to be successful are the ones that the West favors.
The institutions that are going to be successful. Every instance, really, even in China's case?
Not every instance. No principle is universal.
Well, I mean,
I've already pointed you to this, Carl, right? Think back to our previous discussion, right? I've already pointed you to this. You pointed to the example of Northeast Asia. I said, well, some capitulated to the West and some built independent power. right? Obviously, my principle isn't universal, right? I would say China built alternative independent power outside of the hegemonic Western empire. And this is what I was getting to, is Iraq was not allowed to integrate into the West, right? We can take Iran. Iran integrated into the West. They had a successful people's revolution, and it has been punished for the past, 50 years, right? The difference is not a strong institution. Saudi Arabia has a strong institution. They aren't giving more rights to people. They have integrated into the West. That is why they are prosperous, by and large.
Okay. The Iranian People's Revolution. This was a positive development in your opinion?
Oh, was the 1979 revolution better than the Shah? 110%. Are you kidding me?
Really?
Do you like the Shah?
I don't. I think the Shah was terrible, but I also think Khomeini was terrible. I don't think that we need to.
We can think many people are bad. That's fine. I think a people's revolution. Yeah, absolutely.
Moving from one autocrat to another is not.
I think watching life expectancy go up, education level go up, reading level go up. Absolutely, I think that's fantastic.
Okay, that the Shah made the same case. He said that their life expectancy also went up under the Shah. That doesn't mean that the Shah was a better thing.
No, it doesn't. That's not my claim. Life expectancy went up. Life expectancy went up more under the Iranian regime. You can say it's continuity. That's fine. This is irrelevant, right? Like I don't care. I think my claim, it was just that it was a people's revolution. It was. Well, do you disagree?
And I don't think I would describe it as a people's revolution. I look at it as more of an Islamic revolution because but
that's who ended up winning. The socialists supported it.
Exactly. And they were crushed by Khomeini.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the revolution, my friend.
Okay, sure. Okay, yes.
So here's if you are a Marxist, what you would say is there was a people's revolution and then there was a reactionary counter-revolution. That's fine. That's a sub-argument.
Well, that would be my claim, though. That would be my claim. There was a reactionary counter-revolution. Yes, but so when you're saying, that no, because you said Iran is being punished for having a people's revolution. But I would say that the reactionary counter-revolution was a bigger part of that.
No, what America cares about is not that they are like what you're claiming to be authoritarian, harmful to their people. America doesn't care, right? America cares. America's you're asking me why they're being punished, right? America's punishing them not because of any human rights violations. If so, America would be punishing Saudi Arabia. It's because one benefits the America and one doesn't.
Do you think that there would be just as much focus on Iran if they weren't supporting groups like Hezbollah, the Houthis? Do you think there'd be just as much focus on them if they're...
No, because they wouldn't be as much of a threat to America. Obviously. Okay. That's directly in line with what I said, right? Is that not in direct line with what I said?
I don't think that, frankly, supporting Hezbollah really has much to do with America, if I'm being honest.
Really?
No, I don't. I think it has a lot to do with...
I think you disagree with every president America has ever had, if that's the belief.
Sure.
Really?
Yes.
You think Biden was wrong in saying they were a major threat to the sovereignty of Israel? That he believes they need to be protected?
Wait. Are we talking the sovereignty of Israel or the United States?
I view Israel as a direct extension of America.
Okay, well, I don't. I'm saying I would happily concede that Hezbollah is a threat to the Israeli state. It is not a threat to the United States.
Do you not think the American state perceives itself... If Israel is attacked, America perceives itself as attacked?
But didn't we say, when we were talking about fascists earlier, don't we agree that self-perception can be wrong? I agree, yes, that they might perceive Hezbollah as being a threat to the United States, but it's not. It's a threat to the United States.
I just think the liberal self-perception of an empire typically is correct. In that context, in foreign policy context. But
I disagree. I don't
think they are avatars of capital. I think when capital sees Israel being attacked, they respond in the same way as America being attacked to a lesser extent. But wait, so okay, regardless, I think your point about Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, Houthis especially, who America is in direct war with, right?
I didn't use the Houthis as an example for that reason. I recognize that they see the Houthis as a threat because of their dominance over the Red Sea or the potential dominance. I'm saying Hezbollah does not pose that same threat.
I think they pose the threat to the dominance that America wants in the Middle East through Israel.
Like I said, I think because I view the support for Israel, like I said, as a holdover off of previous support from after the Cold War. Because I think, let's say Israel didn't exist, I think we'd be more than content to just keep supporting the Gulf nations, for example. I don't think we would care.
I think the Gulf nations is slightly different. I think. Why do you think you really think the Abraham Accords were purely ideological?
I don't buy into the. Yes, absolutely. I don't buy into the Biden that famously said this. Like, if Israel didn't exist, we would create one. I don't buy into that. I don't think so. I think we would just back whatever strongman probably would be in power in that area.
I think Israel offers maybe I think we're probably moving towards that. maybe you're kind of convincing me here. I certainly don't think the empire acts like that. I think you and I can agree the empire doesn't act like that. The empire acts like Israel's a 51st state.
Sure, yeah, maybe that's a little. I know you're being hyperbolic, but sure, yeah, I agree. But I would say that's for ideological reasons. I would say that. I don't think that's for material reasons.
I think that's insane. So,
you don't think Christian Zionism is like a huge motivating factor?
No. So here's where I'm caught up. I agree. First of all, I don't think anything that we're discussing turns on this. Because if we both agree the empire is, so let's go back 2 statements. I said we're punishing them for a people's revolution. You said you think it would really change if they stopped funding Hamas or Hezbollah. You agree with me that they perceive themselves as Israel, and therefore Hamas and Hezbollah, a threat to Israel is a threat to them. Therefore, them perceiving Hamas and Hezbollah, Iran's support for Hamas and Hezbollah as a threat to them, which is perfectly in line with what I said, which is that we're punishing them for being a threat to America.
No, because I don't think the United States views Israel as America. I just think that they view protecting they perceive as the safe haven for Jewish people around the world. They view that as being a valuable thing for ideological reasons.
So then a threat to something we find valuable is a threat to us, or a threat to our interests. I'll use the more vague phrase.
Sure. Okay, but to the extent that our interest is the protection of the Israeli state. Okay, whatever. That's okay.
So that doesn't actually challenge. So I think you raise an interesting point. I need to think on more exactly the extent to which I think ideological inertia has replaced material conditions. I'm not compelled overwhelmingly, but nothing we say has to do with this. Largely because I think. I don't think the point you made about Hamas or Hezbollah is good, because I think it is in line with what I said about Iran being a threat to America. So,
but the issue isn't a people's revolution. Like, that's what I'm saying. The issue wouldn't be the people's revolution, quote unquote people's revolution.
It's the fact that they stand in economic and foreign policy opposition to America. Yeah,
but
they couldn't give less of a fuck, positive or negative about it being people's.
But I'm saying that that's not the issue. Whether or not, if the Shah, do we agree that if the Shah had just turned on America and he had started supporting Hezbollah, the Houthis, if he had started doing that, it would have been the same thing. It wasn't that we had a problem.
Saddam Hussein is this, yes. Right?
Sure. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I agree.
This is the thing. But this is my overwhelmingly point. The largest actor isn't like strong institutions. It's largely, right, the relationship they have to the hegemonic empire.
No, okay, but the point that I was making, so the reason I took issue with it is that you said that we have been punishing Iran for the last 50 years for having a people's revolution. I'm saying that that's not the issue.
Oh, let me add nuance to that. Yeah.
Okay.
But let me add nuance to that. So I think your counterfactual is helpful and interesting, but I think more threatening to America. Okay, let's talk concepts for a second. More threatening to America than a dictator that disagrees with them is a people that successfully assert sovereignty against them, whether or not you think that's the reality. Think about that narrative to the American empire.
I think you can make that more effectively with Cuba. I think you can make that much more effectively with
Cuba. Yeah, whatever. Sure, whatever. But the point is if they're perceived to be a people's revolution, that is, you agree that's more dangerous to the American empire and its influence, right?
Not inherently, no. But for example,
people's revolution that opposes. So if we have a people's revolution that opposes American interests, a dictator that opposes American interests.
Okay, but so that's my point. So do you agree that if there had been a quote unquote people's revolution in January that overthrew the Ayatollah, they ended the Velayat-e Faqih, it became like a secular democracy, right? You agree we wouldn't have had an issue with that.
So say for example that we had a popular revolution that overthrew the Ayatollah, established a strong sovereign siege state that stood principally in opposition to American imperialism and Zionism. I think what the American media would have said is that is an evil dictator. Like, I think they would have said really bad things about it and tried to push it into being a dictator. And I think America would have been scared shitless if that had happened and they had maintained an anti-imperial source.
So I am genuinely curious, and I'm curious. You're very, very historically well read. So I'm curious if you could give me an example of this. I do think that one of the issues that often arises, though, is that it's okay. Okay, do you think that's the answer to what I was going to say? I was going to say that countries where they're not actually dictatorial being smeared as dictatorships. You don't think Cuba
is pretty democratic? Cuba is more democratic than America is.
More democratic than America is. By what metric?
By oligarchical metrics. So like like Cuba has lower wealth inequality and lower integration of wealth into
I don't
its
think that,
constitutional democracy.
whether or not, if you have lower wealth inequality, I don't think that makes you less
I
of
do.
a dictatorship.
I do. I'm a Marxist, my friend. Yeah, I do. I think
Okay,
democracy is the relation is the extent to which one person has an equivalent amount of power over politics as another person.
Okay,
And
but
if
would
you
you not
have
agree that
massive wealth
would you
inequality
not agree that the
in the
communist
case,
would you not agree that the Communist Party is who holds the power for reforms in Cuba?
I think the Communist Party has democratic feedback to a higher extent than, for example, the Democratic Party in America does.
Okay, that's why I was asking originally, by what metric?
So, okay, like the extent to which people, right, to extent to which the regime is democratically accountable, their actions are democratically accountable to their people.
I know, and I'm saying, how are we measuring that?
Well, I mean, you can measure it observationally, right? So when they do something wrong, is there feedback? Is there change? You can measure it by polls, the extent to which it is popular.
Sure.
And so, for example, like you could do it really analytically.
But do you
and
think
look at
that,
the popularity?
The current leader, Miguel Diaz-Canel, do you think that how many years has he been in power at this point? Right? It's been like what? Probably like 7 or 8 years, something like that. Regardless, like, do you think that like his leadership is like just not contested by the Cuban people at all? You think that like I guess I'm just trying to say, like, I understand you're saying, okay, they are more receptive to feedback by the people.
Yes.
But I'm saying how could I see that? How could I see that?
Did you follow the constitutional reforms that they went through?
I did to an extent, but I don't know if that necessarily proves the point.
Why?
Well, so
do you not think having democratic control over your constitution is like kind of the first rule of a democracy?
But would you disagree that we have democratic control over our constitution?
So I think our constitution, I think the structure through which our constitution was made, like through a bunch of like deeply unpopular, unelected oligarchs in in British colonialism, was less democratic. And I think the power that it has through pure oligarchic like holdovers is less democratic. Yes.
We're talking about constitutional reform. Obviously, the original Cuban Revolution, the constitution that came about after the Cuban Revolution, that was not established. That was not established via plebiscite. That was not like that was established.
But I think this is my claim. So the constitutional reform was certainly more democratic than our current. So take like how much democratic feedback has affected our current constitution, de minimisly, compared to how much democratic feedback has affected Cuban's constitution extraordinarily. Yeah.
And what do you think was the biggest reform, like the biggest meaningful change that came out of the constitutional reforms in Cuba?
I don't have on hand. I know the process primarily. Okay. I know that the process was structurally. So here's the thing, Carl.
It's my understanding. So, for example, how does the world changed?
That presumes that they wanted a whole lot to change.
Okay, but I guess.
But I don't have the policy by policy change. Like this isn't the issue.
It's not supposed to be a quiz. I'm just genuinely trying to understand by what mechanisms we're saying Cuba is more democratic than the United States.
What is your understanding? So, okay, materially, right? So I think we can all agree that democracy is not just when you vote. Democracy doesn't just equal vote. We all agree on that. Cool.
Can we agree that vote? I agree it's not just a vote. Can we agree voting is a big part of it, though?
Maybe in some democracies, like some have through consultation, right? I think that is a valid democratic form of feedback. Do you not? Yes.
But consultation where you don't actually have... If you do not ultimately have the power to throw these people out, I don't know if consultation is that valuable.
Okay. Is it... Okay. Is it legal through a majoritarian manner in America to throw a president out?
Yeah, it's called in our elections we can.
Our elections are not majoritarian.
Okay, that's a different. Okay, yes, I agree. The electoral college is terrible. Yes, I agree that.
No, but now you're going down into it. So here's the thing.
Would you have this? If we didn't have the electoral college, if we didn't have the electoral college, would you say the same thing?
So if we didn't have the electoral college, there would still be the Senate. There would still be the Supreme Court that is anti-democratic. Like the thing, Carl, I'm describing something higher, which is there are always power levers of power. And for like in the most abstract and I think accurate political science term, even liberals agree with me on this, right? Even the silly little liberal academics agree with me. Also, Gigabrain Pat, I blocked you for a reason because you had a meltdown on my live. And also, I did answer the question. And I'm going to stop reading the comments now. But democracy, even according to the liberal position, is the extent to which the people, the demos generally, right, everyone is close to the levers of power. Okay, and that's complicated, where the levers of power are. Do you agree with that general abstract description?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I think you can look at the systems through how those levers of power are expressed. Do we have consultations to labor unions with an implicit threat of general strike, right? Do we have consultations with farmers with an implicit threat of a bad harvest, right? Do we have a consultation with people with a general threat of revolution, right? Do we have voting of labor unions, voting of general strike, right? Those are all ways to express the will of the levers of power. That's one way you can do it. The other way is just look at the levers of power and see their relationship with the government. Is the government using military power to oppress the other levers of power, or are they not? I think that's like, and the extent to which the levers of power are all up here opposed to the people. I think that's a fair and like actually like real way to understand democracy.
Okay, but like, sure, I wouldn't even disagree with that. But that's just like, I guess why I was going back to like before, because what year did the constitutional reforms take place in Cuba?
I don't have an hand. I thought they were pretty recent.
Okay, yeah,
like
that's okay. That's
2017 or
what I.
something.
Okay, sure. That's what I would have thought as well, right? And so, like, up to that point, or even since that point, I guess I'm just trying to understand
2018.
how
Yeah,
on.
sorry.
Okay, sure. Okay, 2018, sure. Okay. So before that point or since that point, I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, if you're an average Cuban, like, how are you saying that they are able to function with more democracy than the average American?
So, like, consultation with the Constitutional Pro Book, engagement with the Communist Party, right? And they do vote as well. They did a direct plebiscite on the Constitution, which there was real opposition to. It was 86% about the Constitution. So
I agree that you could vote on things, sure. But as we're saying, just being able to vote doesn't change anything, right? Because, like, let's say
no, it does. So it is a thing, right? Like, voting means something. It's just not that was my point.
Okay, we agree, right? But so, like, do you think that I would argue a big part of democracy is pluralism and people being able to voice their opposition to the government freely without risk of oppression? Now, or without risk of suppression. Yes, would you agree with this?
Could you guess what me as a leftist am going to respond to you with?
Of course, you're going to say
economy.
You're going to say we're such. Oh, you're okay. You're going to say that it's okay that they do it because they're under embargo.
Not okay. Well, maybe a slightly more, heady response.
It's understanding that they do. It's understandable. You're going to say
not necessarily understandable. In order to ensure free speech, you also must ensure expulsion of foreign influence on that speech. So it is not free speech.
I don't know if I
so if America is spending billions of dollars in your election, and at cost, you have to shut down the party that is taking billions of dollars, I think it is more democratic to do that. That isn't excusing everything and always. I'm just conceptually, right? You do need limitations on some speech and limitations on some spending, by the way, as America does.
I don't know if we should hold that as a principle, though, because for example, we're just saying you're anti-nationalist. I get very weird when people don't like now. Obviously, the dynamic is different because the United States is so powerful, but like yes. I don't like when people are so anti foreign quote unquote influence in the country. Like I think
you're not a country that is actively trying to be murdered by the largest empire in the world. I think that's understandable.
No, okay, yeah, no. Like I said, I agree that the dynamic is different, but I just think that sort of using sort of quote unquote foreign interference as an excuse to crack down on oppression, I do think is a very old opposition is a very old playbook.
Yeah, and Israelis think that colonialism ended 200 years ago. Not to be trite, it's not. I think it's necessary. And if I was a small country that America tried to destroy, a lot of the time, the first principle of democracy is sovereignty. So if your sovereignty is consistently threatened, so like every principle after that comes after it. Because I can ensure
I would say no, but sovereignty for who though? Sovereignty for the elite that's in power of the country. I don't know if that means sovereignty for the people. Because they don't have
it's just so it is not a democracy. So this is like an anarchist tendency, right? Having no power is not better than having any imperfect power. And if you have no power, the people in power are the American empire, which is less democratic because there's a 0% relationship with the people. The American oligarchs over here all Cubans, even an imperfect Cuban regime, some Cubans. You know what I mean?
Okay, but like this would be a different. I feel like the claim is sort of shifting because like if the claim is that okay, Cuba has restrictions on democracy or at least democratic input in the form of vocalizing opposition, but you're saying that's understandable because they're under foreign threat. I feel like that is a different claim than saying they are more democratic. Now you could say the reason
No,
they're
my
less
claim was that
democratic
they're more democratic.
I know, but
Then
now
the
you're making
counterfactual.
excuses for. But now you're making excuses for why they cracked down on the opposition.
No, I'm saying they're more democratic than the counterfactual.
And the counterfactual is where they
allowing America to interfere in your elections.
Okay, but I'm not talking about interfere in elections. I'm talking about allowing people to, for example, write negative op-eds, to have opposition newspapers, things like
if
this.
America funds Radio Free, I don't know, like Radio Free Cuba or something like that, let's come to mind. I think cracking down on Radio Free, it wasn't Radio Free Cuba, it was something in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, unfortunately. If America, for example, possibly funded the National Endowment for Democracy to propagandize your people, I think shutting down that propaganda wing is more democratic than not.
But that's not all that they shut down, though. They shut down.
Cool, but that's not. So here's the thing. That's not my point. My point is there is, in this discussion, and maybe it isn't a direct response to what you said, in this discussion, there needs to be a genuine internalized understanding and tolerance of if the option is allowing America to run something or imperfectly cracking down on American intervention, right? We need to go, okay, the anti-democratic force here is not the response to intervention, but the intervention itself.
But on a policy standpoint, I think we should. I don't think we should have ever had the embargo. I think we should lift the embargo. Like from a
I think that is the first principle. Like principle number one of any argument is if there is ongoing violent intervention, it's literally impossible if you do not already have strong independent institutions and levers of power to have democracy. Actually, I'd go a step further. Just one more sentence. I'd say if there is ongoing intervention, it is impossible to have true democracy because you always have a voter that should not be there, the foreign country trying to kill you.
I don't know if I agree with that, but I think that you can have genuine democracy even under significant repression. But
I'd point to Nicaragua under the Sandinistas. It's not that in form, you may be right. You could allow free speech under it. You could allow free press under it. You could allow a free and fair election. You know what's going to happen? Exactly what happened to the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, and America is going to threaten embargo from you, send in a bunch of fucking CIA agents, send in a bunch of fucking propaganda newspapers, and install a fascist state under the Contras, which is exactly what they did. I don't think that's more democratic than if the Sandinistas shut down their propaganda.
Okay, but that's okay. But again, we're just saying if the claim is just that there have a good rationale for being less democratic, okay. But the original thing that this brought up, like I said, I didn't bring up Cuba because my point wasn't to criticize because I do share a sentiment where I do think that the embargo has absolutely led to a more authoritarian tendency in Cuba. I don't even disagree with that. Where this got brought up is I said it's unfortunate that so many of the countries that are quote unquote opposed to the United States. And you're saying, they get slandered as dictatorships. Well, I'm like, it's unfortunate that they almost always are dictatorships.
So here's the thing. This is once again, we need to be clear about the counterfactuals. And in the weight we put on liberal principles. Okay. I think the least democratic you can be is being ruled by a foreign power. Like formally, right? Like, for example, I don't know, Puerto Rico. That is the least democratic something can be because there's not even a pretend sovereignty over your own land. There's not even a pretend democratic feedback, right? It is purely others forcing upon you.
Do you think there's less democracy in Puerto Rico than in what's a country that we would unambiguously agree is it like Saudi Arabia? Would you agree? Like obviously Puerto Rico is more controlled than I would argue there's much more democracy in Puerto Rico than Saudi Arabia.
It depends. What do you mean by democracy? Do I think the Puerto Ricans have more control over what happens in Puerto Rico than the Saudi Arabians have in Saudi Arabia? No, I think Saudi Arabia has sovereignty. Saudis, a very small portion of Saudis, a very small portion of Saudis,
literally no control. Saudis have no control. It's a monarchy.
I'm sorry, the Saudi royal family, not Saudis.
Okay, that's not sovereignty. That is not sovereignty.
Yeah, that's what sovereignty means, my friend.
Okay, but that's why I started with sovereignty for who? Sovereignty for the royal family?
So sovereignty, yes, that's what I mean. I made a very limited, specific claim. You didn't understand it. Now you're like,
but for somebody, how are you saying you like it? But how are you saying you're like against nation states? But you're saying the most crucial thing in the world is that it's actually better if a monarchy has power over a nation. But you're against nation states.
Better than what? What's my counterfactual?
I would say the situation in Puerto Rico is much preferable to the situation.
The situation, maybe in terms of like human rights. Okay, but we're talking about democracy, my friend.
Yes, I would argue Puerto Rico is much more democracy. They have changes in leadership, and they changed like local policies in Puerto Rico as a result of elections. They do not have that.
So, by the way, Saudi Arabia has local elections.
No, but you can't. Okay, that's like when.
Those are not authentic. So one second.
Those are not regarding real elections.
Puerto Rico is an interesting example because regarding Puerto Rico, qua Puerto Rico. Right, not internal of it, but regarding its foreign policy, regarding its overwhelming relationship with use of force, who has veto power? Who has the ultimate control over Puerto Rican policy? Is it the Puerto Rican people, or is it the entities they do not vote in of American Congress and American president?
Yes, but I'm saying that the average Puerto Rican
can you answer the question directly?
What's the specific question?
Who has more control, the Puerto Rican people or the entities they do not engage in, the American Congress and the American presidency?
I agree, the American Congress. But I'm saying that but I'm saying that is still more democracy than with the monarchs in Saudi Arabia.
So this is an interesting example because we're talking past each other. I think because 0 Puerto Ricans have control over Puerto Rican total policy, right? Because they do not have control over what ultimately owns them entirely. Now they can do their own things, just as like certain people within Saudi Arabia can do their own things. There's townships, there's smaller things, etc. And
That's not true. That's literally not true, though. You're saying that
how many Puerto Ricans are represented? How many Puerto Ricans are representing Puerto Rico in American Congress?
Don't they technically have one? They don't have voting rights.
They have no voting rights.
Well, sure, but you said consulted.
Consultation. That's an interesting point. That makes it slightly more democratic. Sure.
Okay. Yeah. But you just said the word. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, they are. That is a form of consultation, right? But they still get 0 veto power. Sure. Right. I think Saudi Arabia is more than consulted. Some Saudis are more than consulted in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabian monarchy.
Okay. I agree. This is a difference. This might just come down to a difference of values, or maybe
but that's what sovereignty is. No, it's just the definition of sovereignty. Puerto Rico has no sovereignty, and you can say it's worth giving up sovereignty for certain human rights.
But this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that you're looking at sovereignty from this sort of, I don't want to say ethnic, because it's clearly not ethnic, but like from a nationalist framework. And I'm saying
national sovereignty. Yes, duh.
Okay, but what's a higher priority? Like real sovereignty, like for the average person. But I wanted to use the
words specifically. Sovereignty is the like.
But I think we started with democracy. I thought we started with democracy.
Okay, we can talk about democracy. Yeah.
I'm saying the average Puerto Rican has much more democratic say in what happens in their life than the average Saudi.
What?
Unless your last name has been Saudi.
Okay. That might be true. Through what feedback mechanisms are you talking?
Through elections. Like they do have authentically free and fair elections in Puerto Rico. That's not the case.
Do they have? Let's talk on what level. So on Puerto Rican like internal policy, which has been granted to them by Congress, do they have more democratic feedback over, for example, what is granted to them by Congress than a Saudi Arabia?
No.
Which let's just take it to be 0 or whatever the proportion.
Sure. See, I agree. Yes.
Do they have any? They have none. Let's just put it at 0, right? Because they get no formal votes over it.
Okay, but the average Saudi doesn't either.
Exactly. So this is my point. Like is like one has 0, one has the monarchy, right? The monarchy is like 5 people, but 5 people divided by like 1 million people is still greater than 0. It's a facetious point for a facetious question, which is that sovereignty is a precursor to any genuine democracy.
I completely disagree. I think that there is much more authentic, genuine democracy taking place in Puerto Rico in the form
not of on the scale that we're talking. You can have, so like, for example, the Raj in India, right, had local leaders And those local leaders had tribal obligations through what is a proper understanding of democracy, right? But the colonial relationship was so overwhelming to the democracy that any significant divergence from it threatened its sovereignty, which undermines its democracy.
We agree completely, but I would argue that the Raj structure is much more akin to what we're seeing in Saudi Arabia than Puerto Rico.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, the Raj was directly ruled with representatives that went back to the parliament. But once again, whatever, this doesn't matter. My point is, in that I don't know that you know much about the Raj.
You say I don't know much? Did you say I don't know much about the Raj?
Yeah. Do you? I don't know what you know.
I wouldn't claim to be like an expert on it, but like the system that you are describing, I would argue, is more akin to Saudi Arabia.
Oh, not at all. So they had direct representatives. They didn't have representatives for the Indian people, but they had representatives for the ruling class in Britain. And they had local election. They had more local principalities.
I know. No. I'm not saying it's the same structure. I'm just saying the lack of democracy is more similar to the lack of democracy in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, it's a very different.
Well,
structure.
As per the metropole, it was anyway. Whatever. My point here, because I'm a materialist, my point is that democracy, the relationship to the people, a given government, a state government, a federal government, like even a world government, the UN, whatever. The extent to which the people that are represented by that, right, have control over that outside of external influence. And that can be violated, right, by a few set of people within it having outsized impact. That's true. That's undemocratic. That's less democratic. And it can be affected by a external foreign country or foreign corporation, for example, right? Like ExxonMobil has outsized influence in Nigeria over their democratic elections, right? And that makes it less democratic.
Okay, I think maybe I just honed in on the point. Do you not think that foreign, and maybe this is just I don't want to say you have like an anxiety towards foreign aspects, but I feel like that's part of where it's coming from. Like, do you not agree that a monarchy within a quote unquote nation can function as just as foreign as an outside power exercising some? No,
that's what I just described. Yeah, no, that's what I just described. Yeah.
Okay, but then I don't know. I don't know.
What you asked me was regarding Cuba, right? And so why I think Cuba is quite democratic, right? Or is at least more democratic than America, is because Cuba, because of its siege structure and because of the relationship it has to other parts of the world as effective counterbalances to American. So there's a foreign aspect and there's an internal aspect. And the thing is, Carl, when we started this, you asked me to describe Cuba as a democracy, right? Or more democratic or whatever, right? It's all a scale.
Sure. I was asking, what way does the average Cuban have more democracy than the average American?
In that. So because of, you have to first expel foreign influence, right? And America is an oligarchy, right? Let's talk about the oligarchy of America. We have a foreign influence. Just put in your words, right? We have what is effectively a monarchy of 200 billionaires that run our whole entire country. So I think if we are to be a democracy, we need to expel their power from our democratic system.
I disagree that the billionaires have the power in the country, though. I disagree.
I think if that's true, you need to like check your brain, and if someone took out like 99% of it,
they have an enormous amount of influence, because it's different than saying they control the country. Because ultimately, the power does lie with the Congress, and the Congress can absolutely insert
delusion. You're currently on psychedelics. This is delusion. You're having an ongoing delusion. You should get psychiatric help. The fact that it goes through Congress, just like, by the way, do you know where like the House of Lords in the UK came from? Like that is a Congress of the aristocracy. The fact that it goes through Congress doesn't change anything.
Our Congress is not the House of Lords, though. You can, even if you want to say
the Senate literally is, my friend.
You can say that the Senate was modeled after the House of Lords, but the House of Lords is like literally no. The House of Lords is literally just aristocrats. I'm saying the Senate.
That's actually not true. The House of Lords in modern day is chosen by the prime minister in large part.
Yeah, they choose aristocrats.
By and large, they don't. Most people are not.
In the current House of Lords, mm-hmm. You're saying they don't. Who do you think makes up the current House of Lords?
Like randos, by and large. It's artists. Like the writer of Phantom of the Opera is a lord. It's a bunch of people.
Okay, maybe he's one of them. My guess is much more disproportionately people with more aristocratic backgrounds than the House of Commons.
Oh God, no! Aristocrats are a pretty small portion of the English class.
I agree, but they make up a disproportionate percentage of the House of Lords.
Disproportionate, yes, but not majority. I say this, by the way, I don't know if you know my back. I went to like Oxford. I was around aristocrats and lords. Like it's just wrong. Like for example, the master of my college, Baroness Valerie Amos. She's a lord, not an aristocrat.
Okay.
It's just wrong.
Would you agree that it's people with predominantly privileged backgrounds?
I would be interested on the stats, but yes, it's disproportionately privileged. Yes, but aristocracy is a very specific thing.
That's cool. You went to Oxford, by the way. I'm sure you get that all the time.
Oh, thank you. It was delightful.
I bet it was.
Yeah. So the point here is the relationship that the American working class has to how our state power is used, because of the relationship that state power has with our billionaires, interferes. Like I would say, the billionaires have a lot more influence, a lot more connection there than Cubans, right? Cubans, because of their both current governmental structure, as well as the extent to which they've expelled those billionaires, the American billionaires, the wealth, the massive wealth inequality that is affecting that. This is the thing. I just want to say one thing that we're going to disagree on, because you are a liberal and I am a leftist. I do not see a difference between economic and political power. You do. I see economic power as the ability to enforce the political power of excluding someone from certain property. I view economic power primarily as a definitionally political, because it is the right to use state force to exclude someone from a certain area, right? I don't think they're conceivably necessarily intertwined.
But your claim is that billionaires in America have as much say over, or I'm sorry, substantially more say over policy in America than the Communist Party in Cuba.
So first of all, there are more people in the Communist Party of Cuba than there are billionaires in America. There are more people.
As a group, as a faction.
So let me make a few statements that are really, really simple. Okay. Which are, there are more people, not literally, than the Communist Party. There are more people proportionally. So even if it were true, which I don't think it's true, I think it's even. I'm gonna sound crazy. I think it's even more democratic than that, my friends. I think that even if it were true that literally no one else had any power over anything else in Cuba, other than just purely the members of the Communist Party in Cuba, it would still be more democratic than America, which is run by 200 billionaires.
Okay, so I disagree with that really strongly, and I'm going to use, this is a bit of a far out example, but I remember there was one time, this is a long time, I do a lot of debates, and somebody tried to make the case to me that Rhodesia was more democratic than certain African nations today, because it was like 10% of the population was white, and for that population, they had democracy, but so they were saying it's more democratic than a dictatorial state. But I would argue that that's not the case, because while you could say that there was democracy that existed for white people in Rhodesia, the vast majority of the country was excluded by matter of the class of person that they were. By being a Black African, they were excluded from the political process as a whole. And I think that is fundamentally less democratic than like a dictatorship. But regardless, in the case of the Communist Party, I would argue that it's obviously very. I'm not equating Cuba to Rhodesia whatsoever, but I'm saying just because saying that Cuba technically is like a larger group than the billionaires, I don't think that makes them more democratic. Because I do.
I took a very specific claim, which is if it is like I believe. Okay, both are not true. It is not true that only people. It's obviously not true. Me, by existing and having access to firebombs, have political control. Like, that is a real political power. Like, let's just be clear, right? So obviously none of this is true. We're doing simplified models. But on the simplified model of the question you asked me, right, which is, even if I accept that billionaires are the only one with any political power, let's say we cut off everyone else's hands and take away, Molotovs.
No.
And no one else has any power at all. And that's true as well in Cuba. I'm just explaining the very basic thing, which is there are more people that still have power in Cuba than there are in America, and certainly proportionally.
But what's the point of saying that?
But that's not a relevant question. Because we both
agree that's not the dynamic. We both agree that's not the dynamic.
Exactly, it's a silly question that was asked to me. It was silly.
I don't know
what a waste of time. What a silly question. Okay. I'm just explicating. So without nuance, right? This becomes very silly very quickly, right? And my point is because of the complex interplay of different levers of power within Cuba between the unions, right, as well as the military, right, as well as the police, as well as the history of the revolution, right, as well as the general common people and their consistent threat of revolution, right, as well as foreign intervention and the threat that has in empowering schisms within the people, right, generally have more access to different levels of power that have real impact on policies of use of state violence, compared to America, where not only are that history not there, right? Not only do these unions get crushed under Reagan, right? I could go through each and every cultural lever that we have. The church has been crushed as a political force for progress. The union has been crushed by deep exportation of labor unions, and our electoral system was made to be undemocratic by a bunch of slave-owning fucking colonizers. So nothing about either the structure or the underlying material facts of our electoral system lead me to believe that it's democratic, and then I see that it's not by the vast majority of no president's ever been popular for the past fucking 50 years. Policies that are popular by and large don't pass.
Obviously you're saying a lot there, but just on the point at the end there, no president ever being popular, I would argue that is a product of having a more democratic system where there are so many factions that are able to voice their displeasure at all times. People are very able to openly be critical of the government. There are so many people that, I do think that is a very big part of it. There's also a decrease in lack of trust in institutions.
True of all populations. No matter how much you silence someone, people are going to disagree.
Sure, but your ability to measure discontent is more difficult in a one-party state. Would you disagree?
In Cuba, we have pretty good. We can observe the systems of democracy they have internally pretty easily.
Look, I'm not one of these people that says that Cuba is the most totalitarian state in the world. I think as far as one-party states go,
but I'm just trying to widen your understanding of what that means and why that exists.
I understand why they have a one-party state. I just don't think.
Which, by the way, Japan does as well.
Japan doesn't have a one-party state. I know the LDP has been in power, but that's the thing. When the LDP lost elections, which they did, they were out of power. Just like the Social Democrats.
They lost one election in the past 70 years.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. It was a one-party state.
If they hadn't, would they still be would they be a one-party state?
I think what makes them not a one-party state is your ability to lose power.
So hypothetically.
Yes, I'm saying yes.
So hypothetically, under Chinese constitution, the current party in power could lose.
I don't think that's true. I actually think it's built.
I think it is. There are opposition parties to the electoral.
There are opposite. There's 8 or 9 opposition parties that are built into the system. But I am 99% sure it is built into the People's Republic of China that the Communist Party has to be in power.
I think the opposition party. I think the opposition parties could exert larger power than the CPC. The CPC might still have entrenched party power through the Politburo.
I don't know if that's
true.
But
in the Congress, they could lose power.
But that's the thing. I don't think that the margins have actually changed. I disagree.
Once again, I don't really care about the structures, Carl. This is kind of my point. There's so much more to discuss about democracy. There's so much more to discuss about democracy, right? Than there is to discuss than just the structures that are there. Because there is also. You would agree there is some democratic feedback within the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, of course. Yes, I don't disagree.
Okay, cool. Then the discussion is, what are the underlying levers that force there to be democratic feedback?
In your instance, like you said, you're going to point to things like consultation, or for example,
I'm not going to point to consultation. I'm going to point to worker organization, right? Like there is in Cuba. I'm going to point to literacy. I'm going to point to independent militias.
But unions are also crushed in China. There's not a lot of independent.
China's a different discussion. China's a different discussion because it has institutionalized and integrated a lot of its labor into the state, right? So China's a different discussion on the basis of power.
It's my understanding the labor unions are not very independent in China. In Cuba, it's my understanding they are more. Yeah, in Cuba they are more independent.
Yeah, that was my claim. Yeah.
Okay. Well, like I said, as far as one-party states go, agree. Cuba is one of the less authoritarian ones.
But I just don't care if it's a one-party state. I don't see there democracy within a party and democracy within two parties, right? Who, by the way, agree on 90% of their policies, is not necessarily structurally more democratic.
Who do you think power lies right now? So obviously, we both agree the Trump administration is trying to strangle Cuba. Who do you think power lies with in Cuba, whether or not to make a deal? I would argue a huge chunk of that power lies with Miguel Diaz-Canel and the rest of the Politburo. I would argue that is where the power lies currently. Their ability
to decide
think
they have that power. What power base is giving them that power?
What power base is giving them power? The decades of institutional rule by the Communist Party in Cuba.
Just inertia?
Yes.
So could the military turn on them?
Well, obviously, theoretically, the military could theoretically turn in any country.
But why doesn't it?
Well, I think they're pretty ingrained.
Well, it has turned on people in countries. Why did it there?
I think it's my understanding that the military is very ingrained within the current communist apparatus. Is it
Okay,
not?
so the power base of the current communist apparatus is in part because it has military support.
Okay, sure, but that's true of like
But what if
99%
there
of
were,
dictators.
do you think a general? Do you think a general
almost
strike? Do you think Cuba could survive a general strike of laborers?
I think probably 99% of countries couldn't survive a general strike.
Okay, so the fact that most labor unions not calling for a general strike within Cuba, which most are not, it demonstrates that they are integrated into the power base in Cuba. Is that accurate?
Not calling for a general strike, but like I said, I think a general strike would break like most countries. Like that's not exclusive.
Exactly. So you need to capitulate at least some amount so as to not so as to appease the workers to maintain their power.
I feel like you're not bringing up like things that would differentiate them from other countries. Like I said, the military being ingratiated with the dictatorship.
You're looking for I don't think Cuba is very different than other countries in terms of how power works. Why are you looking for that?
But you do. You think they're much more democratic than the U.S. You do think it's different.
Well, I've told you why. So why did I? What did I tell you the difference between Cuba and America is regarding the democracy level?
Because you think, due to the lack of wealth inequality and the ability of at least your perceived ability, and you can say that this is borne out of the average Cuban to have feedback loops with the government in the forms of.
So there's structural reasons, but the main one is wealth inequality, freedom from American billionaires.
I don't. Freedom from American billionaires. If American billionaires didn't exist, that would not make them like more or less of a dictatorship. Like we both agree,
but it would make America less of a. But it's comparative. So the thing, like that my claim was not my claim at all. Okay. My claim was that it makes America less democratic because of how billionaires interact with the political system.
Well,
This is the thing. We keep going in circles. You keep asking for other reasons. We do. You keep asking. But let's try and make this very clear. Because if this is the disagreement, that's the only disagreement that we can maybe go into it or go out of it. If the only disagreement is you keep asking me what's different about Cuba and America, what's different about Cuba and America, why is one more democratic than the other, and I keep giving and you keep looking for different answers, right? And I keep saying, well, I engage with the answers because I try to, but then the answer is ultimately. One has a shit ton of billionaires that run their whole entire country, and one doesn't. That's a significant democratic difference.
Okay. Okay. Well, like I said, obviously we just fundamentally disagree because I do think that the Communist Party exerts more influence over the governance structure of Cuba than.
But I don't think that's a material assertion, right? That's not. It's immaterial. Like you can't if. They don't assert power for no reason, just like billionaires don't assert power for no reason.
Well, no, and this is where
they have their workers.
This is where it gets more like fundamental. But like, I would argue that there is no like meaningful way for like Cubans right now to advocate for the liberalization of their economy. But you would view liberalization as, at least I call it liberalization. You would call it as, I don't know, increasing exploitation. Like, and so obviously you don't view that as even a worthwhile right to have.
Which is what happened when Americans called for the communization of their country. What did the American ruling class do?
There was never widespread communization. The calls for that.
What happened?
Like what do you think? What time period are you referring to when there was American?
Yeah, what happened to Black Panthers?
The Black Panthers. I know what happened to Fred Hampton, but like,
what happened to the Black Panthers as a whole?
Well, the Black Panthers as a whole still exist. What do you mean?
The Black Panthers as a whole got infiltrated and destroyed, and many of them got killed by the American state.
Many of them, or who was that? Other than Fred Hampton, who are we talking about?
I mean, I'm sorry. So, Assata Shakur got shot by the American state.
Wasn't she in Cuba? Or am I thinking someone else?
She didn't get killed. She got shot.
Okay, I don't know. Was she part of the Black Panthers? I don't remember. I thought she was part of a different Marxist.
She was part of the Black Liberation Army.
Okay, but that's not the Black Panthers.
She was a member of the Black Panthers.
Okay, well, maybe she was. Okay, I thought she like literally just died in Cuba.
She did.
Okay.
Because Cuba is free from American imperialism and is able to save them. Yeah, she was a member of the Black Panthers.
Okay. I'm not going to go in.
But also the BPP was kind of just recently reestablished. It's not a direct continuity. I mean, they claim to be a direct continuity, but like it was literally inactive for quite a while. But regardless, my answer is so when Americans tried to call for communization, they murdered us, like literally murdered us. So, I agree that Fred Hampton I agree that he was killed.
I'm saying that I agree that she was shot, but it's my understanding. Wasn't she shot in like an
There's
altercation?
also the
where,
move bombing. Do you know what the move bombing is?
State guard person that she shot as well. It's a complicated thing with
Allegedly.
Allegedly, sure, but okay.
They also tried to kill her at state prisons, which I would argue is largely a purpose. Do you know the move bombing in Philadelphia?
I don't know the move bombing. What is the move bombing?
When we bombed, like I need to actually check. Move bombing. It was when we took like firebombed. We killed 6 adults and 5 children were killed in an attack on a like protesters, activists, a house of black radicals. I believe they were black radicals.
Okay, sure. Now, obviously, we both agree that obviously that's terrible.
No, but here's the thing: is like you see how there are limits on free speech in Cuba, which they openly admit. You know, Philadelphia. There are also limitations on free speech in America, and there's certainly limitations. There's certainly, by the way, certainly limitations on our ability to use certain levers of power, right? Especially radical organizing in America.
I would say violence. I would say violence is if it's kept as speech, you very little suppression.
That's not true.
Okay, what is the non-violence?
Also, Assata Shakur, by the way, the primary crime of most Black Panthers was feeding children, right? So the CIA went in.
With Assata Shakur, like, believe it or not, like, even if you don't believe it, she is accused of killing someone.
Okay.
So, that would be her speech then. Okay, you could say you don't believe it, but I'm saying that that's not her being criminalized for speech.
Angela Davis agrees with me, but so I'm not gonna disagree with Angela Davis on that one.
Is there examples of somebody that wasn't accused of murdering someone being cracked down on?
MLK.
MLK. Okay, we would agree. Okay, we would agree that that's very bad. Yes, J. Edgar Hoover, terrible person. But we're talking about today.
No, we're not. Like, why would we just talk about today?
Because I would argue there's much less violence that would be used in a situation like that.
Really? You don't think there's as much cracking down on activists? Have you seen Minnesota going on? And have you seen Minnesota happening currently by anyone today?
Okay,
anything happening in Minnesota?
Okay, wait. We agree that there are obviously mass the protests against
mass state violence.
I don't think that we have seen mass state violence. I mean, obviously,
we think that ICE is mass state violence against people that are seen as in opposition to the regime.
I agree. Wait, hold on.
Do you think if Cuba did this, America would label it mass state violence in opposition to the regime?
Sure. Well, sure. I agree that ICE is absolutely violence, but I would say that that's not. But it's not. I'm sorry. You're throwing me off because I literally support abolishing ICE, and I'm like, wait, why is this being used? I'm talking about against speech, though. What's happening with ICE is not speech.
Wait, but what's happening in Mahmoud Khalil is a good example. What's happening in Minnesota is violence against speech.
Look, I agree completely with Mahmoud Khalil. I agree completely with Rameda Ozturk. I agree completely with that. Those are.
But you agree they're bad, but don't see how they're a system.
No, I agree they're a system, but those.
What are they a system to protect?
Well, with Rameda Ozturk and Mahmoud Khalil, it'd be Israel, but I think that
doesn't. So this is very I don't think it is. I think they represent a threat to American imperialism primarily, and American imperialism which benefits billionaires. Like the thing is, like you have a purely idealist understanding of these, but like you recognize they're bad, and do you? So why do you think the security apparatus is being used in this particular way?
I think I think that Trump is weaponizing ICE against people because there's a very big hostility towards immigrants right now.
Okay, why do you think the state apparatus is able to be used that way? And not, for example, there's a very big hostility. The vast majority of Americans don't like billionaires. Why aren't we arresting them?
I don't think that the hostility towards immigrants is the same as the hostility towards billionaires.
No, I think billionaires are more hated.
I don't think that we see that actually effectuated in.
I agree. I agree because I think there's a split between the people and the state apparatus. Because I don't think the state apparatus reflects the people. Because I think the billionaires control most of the levers of power in our state apparatus.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I agree that with no. Well, okay, but your claim is that there's more. Your claim is that there's more hostility towards particularly amongst the Republican Party. More hostility
just
towards billionaires than.
I'm talking about democracy, brother.
But the Republicans are who are in power because they won the election.
Did Democrats go knock down the door of billionaires and kidnap them and deport them?
No, we also didn't deploy.
So there is more hostility. There is more hostility amongst the general American population towards billionaires than there is amongst the vast majority of any other group. So, how are we defining hostility, though? How many people celebrated Luigi Mangioni's little?
I honestly,
actions.
Every poll I've ever seen shows that it wasn't the big minority. Also, what's his name? The Derek Thompson wasn't a billionaire.
What? He represented the billionaire class, is the point.
Okay, sure. Okay.
And it was something like 35% literally celebrated was the data I have. 35% literally celebrated.
35% of 18 to 25 or 35% of the whole country?
I need to check the poll that I looked at, to be honest.
I don't think it's 35% of the country. Because I remember looking at polling on this.
Either way, you would agree most people don't like billionaires. Billionaires have a net favorability negative, right?
I agree that but people might be unhappy with billionaires, but the amount of hostility that the Republican Party currently, and frankly, an upsetting amount of Democrats, an upsetting amount of Democrats have to immigrants, it's very real, unfortunately. Like, we both don't like that, but there's a number of people that have enormous.
I think if you look at the mix of the Nick Fuentes base and the Hassan Piker base, we have a lot of hostility towards billionaires. Nick Fuentes doesn't like billionaires because he's anti-Semitic, right? But regardless,
I don't think Nick Fuentes is who represents the current Republican base.
No, but he represents a good portion of the population in terms of young.
He does. I don't think.
I think the America First fascists. I mean, if you look at how that's working, regardless, my point is a little broader than this, right? Which is, we did not see the American security state leveraged against the elites nearly to the extent that we have seen them leveraged against communists.
I don't think the vast majority of people want that. Like, you're claiming that the vast majority of people want, like, ICE to come kick down the door of a billionaire?
Not ICE, literally. I
mean, like a police and whatever faction. Like,
I think the vast majority of people. So the vast majority of people don't like billionaires. Yes.
No, that's not the claim, though. That's not the claim.
The vast majority of people also don't want. Sorry, the vast majority of people don't want people to go have ICE go to kick down the doors of immigrants, right? They just think they shouldn't be here. Most people. Here's the other thing:
wait. I agree. I agree that most people don't like what they're seeing with ICE, but there is the vast majority of the Republican Party and an upsetting minority of Democrats want immigrants deported. They want. Is it the majority? You think the majority of Democrats want deportations? I don't think so. I saw a recent poll that showed.
I think any deportations at all.
Maybe. Well, if we go to any deportations, that's different. I think that there's a huge. We would agree the numbers are different. My point, though, is that there's a huge percentage of people that want people deported. You and me would disagree with this, but that is a much larger number of people.
What's the percent that want to see the wealthy taxed?
Wait, wealthy tax, that's a different thing than saying that we should
let's talk about that's a use of state force. Fine, whatever. That's a use of state force. Have we seen the wealthy taxed?
I mean, we have, and to the extent we have progressive tax rates. I don't know what a wealth tax pulls at. Like, do you disagree that we have would you disagree we have a progressive tax rate?
The vast majority of people want to see the wealthy taxed at a higher rate. That's pretty obvious.
I think that that's probably true. Yes, but do you agree
that wealthy people are within the past 30 years?
Do you agree?
No, we've seen the effective tax rate of billionaires go down.
I
would. Why do you think that is?
For billionaires, because we keep electing Republicans that keep cutting their taxes.
Why? If that's not popular, why does it happen?
Because they're voting for Republicans more for, like, cultural issues.
Okay, so people. Okay. That's fascinating.
People have priorities.
Why do you think they care about more? So, okay. Why do you think they... So your argument is that they're voting against their economic best interest in a way that just happens to benefit billionaires all the time. Why do the regressive social issues that is popular always fall on the side of billionaires?
Why do the regressive social issues always fall? I would disagree. I don't know if anti-immigrant necessarily favors billionaires.
It certainly does. Why do billionaires keep funding hedge funds that support it? Or think tanks that support it?
In what do you mean by that?
Like Heritage, like Cato.
Well, no, Cato is very pro-immigrant.
They're not. They're pro deportation.
I was literally reading a study by it was literally
Cato is comparable to other neocon institutions. Yes,
Cato was putting out reports literally on like what a small percentage of people that are being deported are violent criminals. It was like an oppositional.
Yeah, they're anti-fascist. They're still neocons. They're pro-legal. They're pro-legal immigration. They're
my understanding of the Cato Institute is they are not supportive of the deportation. It's like a libertarian. It's like a economic libertarian.
They're neocons, I'd say, and they fund into it. But there are better examples. You're right.
Okay, so well, Bill Kristol's a neocon. He wants to abolish ICE. Like, I don't know if neocon tells us what someone thinks about immigration.
Do you not agree that, like, by and large, billionaire-backed think tanks are supporting anti-immigration sentiment?
No, I don't think so. I think it's much more frankly, a lot of very ignorant people that are very xenophobic.
You don't think it's manufactured at all?
No, not in the way that you're describing. I think it's manufactured by like talking heads that like are trying to gin up hostility towards immigrants.
I'm trying to think of a better like historical example where we would both agree. Do you think that in Nazi times, the very wealthy supported the Nazis and regressive forces, like at a certain point in time when they were clearly getting power?
It's my understanding, yes, that obviously when it looked like they were taking power, they started to flip and support the Nazis, yes.
Sure. And sure. They also drummed up anti-Semitic rhetoric and aims to benefit the Nazis. Do you think that's accurate?
I think that was more of a being pulled rather than the push. I don't think that their ideal would have been the anti-Semitic part.
Sure. So, like, the overarching thing here is, I think
which
your perception is
which
we just
billionaire do you
happen
think
to be benefiting billionaires just on accident?
No, I don't think. Frankly, I would argue that immigration is very actually good for the economy. I don't think that it's bad for the economy. I would argue deportations hurts the economy.
I think having a permanent underclass. So the billionaire argument for deportations is that having a permanent underclass allows you to underpay them and have a permanent threat to the labor force to prevent any labor unionization.
But they don't want the deportations.
Who?
The quote-unquote billionaire class.
I mean, Elon Musk does.
Yeah, but Elon, it's very clearly ideological with Elon.
The economic. I'm just telling you the Marxist analysis of this is that the Marxist analysis of anti-immigrant sentiment amongst billionaire classes, which we can point the Koch brothers were at the same time they were for a circular exchange, but when that became clearly not possible, right? Heritage Foundation and whatever the fucking Tea Party, for example, switched, or the Tea Party didn't switch, but the Tea Party came out of this switch towards being anti-immigrant, right? They were always strong, pro-border, right?
The Tea Party was always nativist. I don't know about the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers were very for immigration. The Tea Party was always nativist.
No, but the Koch brothers funded the Tea Party. That's what I'm saying. So the Koch brothers switched throughout their career to being pro-circular immigration, to being pro-nativism.
I agree that they funded the Tea Party, but I think that they didn't fund the Tea Party. They funded the Tea Party because they thought the Tea Party would help them effectuate things like tax cuts, not because of the anti-immigrant stuff.
No, I mean, I think it showed a fundamental change in the Koch brothers.
Do you think most billionaires in this country are pro or against immigration?
I think the vast majority of them are fine with brutalizing immigrants. I think most of them want immigrants here, and they don't want. Here's the thing, this is in line with general material analysis, it is beneficial to have an underclass that you can underpay and consistent have a legal threat of deporting them.
Sure. Like I said, I understand that would be the claim, but I'm saying that if that is your claim, they wouldn't want to deport them.
They would want,
I agree. You could say, if we say the majority of billionaires don't want amnesty, which is what I would support, I agree with that. But I don't think that they want mass deportations.
No, they don't. So that's why you see slowing forces for Trump, right? That's why Trump, once again, what happens is they build up ideologies of nativism, right? And then Trump is a consequence, and Trump actually goes beyond what the billionaires want.
I think that nativism is a very.
This is true of the Nazis as well.
I think that there's just also authentic nativism. Unfortunately,
yeah, sure. There's authentic anti-Semitism as well. I'm talking about the political force of it. Yeah. There's a reason that authentic nativism takes over before authentic humanitarianism or authentic, whatever the fuck. There are prioritizations of ideologies, right? And it seems immaterial to you how they come about. You're just observing that they do.
No, I am saying that nativism, I don't think is the product of billionaires. I think
where do you think nativism came from in America? Why do you think it spiked here and not 70 years ago?
70 years ago? There was absolutely a spike in nativism. What are you talking about? 70 years ago? In the 50s?
Equal to now?
There was literally the 50s is when Eisenhower did. I'm not going to say the name of it. Operation Slur towards Hispanic people, and yes, there's absolutely a very large spike in nativism.
So how do you explain the ebb and flow on that?
How do I explain the ebb and flow of immigrants? Because there was a lot less immigration after that time, and unfortunately, I think a lot of the nativism is the result of increased immigration.
Why do you think
increased immigration?
What do you think the push is for increased immigration?
Where do I think the push is for increased immigration?
Why? So if we've seen an ebb and flow,
I would argue it's more economic incentives.
Okay, so you think what happens is economic incentives push people to immigrate, right?
To be open to immigration.
open to immigration. Okay, and then there is a non-economic, ideological, nativist response.
Yes, exactly. I think that people are.
Can I
very
offer a
racist,
counter?
very racist.
That I think
Sure,
that
wait,
maybe there's an
but
economic. Once you have
do you
people
not think
here,
that that's a thing? Don't you think there's an enormous amount of hostility towards like Muslim immigration currently?
do you think that there is also an economic incentive once they are here to use their status as an immigrant and the threats of nativism to underpay them and consistently push down their wages? And one of the ways you can push down someone's wage is with a threat of deportation.
I disagree. And there's a good amount of data on this. Immigration does not suppress wages. I think that's a nativist talking point, frankly. Immigration law, it just doesn't.
My claim isn't that immigration suppresses wages. I'm claiming that the billionaires would like to use them as such. Whether they actually do, I agree they don't. I agree it's not effective, or not that effective.
Okay.
But it's very effective at encountering unions.
You're saying immigration counters unions?
Historically
unionization is already low in this country. I don't think it's.
Do you know how they destroyed unionization in this country?
Obviously, yes. Under the Reagan administration, there was a huge crackdown in unionization. Yes, I agree.
They unionized. They part of that was nativism, and part of that was deporting the or exporting the industry.
But I don't think that. I don't know. I don't know if I agree. I would agree with you more. Maybe I agree that deindustrialization. I don't think that immigration is what caused it. I agree that obviously globalization would be a bigger factor in following out unions. But I would say that's a different.
But one of the ways you do that is importing people that you can then export, so that like for sustenance purposes, like cyclical immigration was used for.
Yeah, but that's the big claim, is that cyclical immigration has actually gone down.
Yes,
a lot of people are much more likely to stay here today.
Yes, and that's why we are much more likely to deport them, because cyclical immigration is better because it maintains an underclass which you can underpay. Just as I would argue the prison system, and once again, this is like the Marxist approach.
But the reason we saw the hardening of the border was, it was largely a product of like 9/11. But before that, because if your claim is the billionaires want cyclical immigration, why wouldn't they be advocating for a softening of the border so people could more easily traverse back and forth?
Because they're going to stay now.
But you're claiming they don't want them to stay. You're claiming that they want it to be cyclical.
So they want either cyclical immigration or a permanent underclass.
Okay, well, that just sounds like they want both then. I don't know how they can want, but wouldn't those be contradictory things?
That's why it's an or, my friend.
Okay, well.
Did I not say or? Did I accidentally say and?
Well, no, I'm just saying, you're saying they want a permanent underclass or they want cyclical. But this started,
which would act as a permanent underclass.
But this started as you saying they actually want them to deport them, and I'm saying I don't think
they want to. They want to use the threat of deportation as a way to keep them as a permanent underclass. I think. Wait, have I been confusing? I think I've been really clear. I feel like I'm repeating myself. Where are we confused?
Because I think that Trump is actually effectuating a lot of deportations. He's not just threatening it; he's actually doing a lot of deportations.
Yes,
like they don't just want the threat.
Yes, I agree. That fascists take the ideology built by billionaires to benefit them. So here, this is the critique of liberalism. Liberals are pretty so they're a little too nice for billionaires, right? They sometimes give immigrants accidentally a few too rights so that they get uppity, right? And then sometimes, right, the conservatives come back and sometimes they're a little too mean, right? And that's why I like the leftist critique of liberalism and conservatism within the Marxist framework is uppity. I'm using that a quote. I'm sorry. That wasn't literally calling them uppity. Let me be very, very clear.
You're using it like sarcastically.
I'm quoting them. Yes, I'm quoting the racist people that are saying racist things. Yes. My apologies if that was taken out of context. But what I mean is they is they are used against each other, right? So they are used explicitly against each other to, at some point, bring them in as a cheap labor force. And then when Republicans come in, it is a threat. Does that make sense?
No. I understand that the dynamic as you're claiming it to, but I think that you view it, and obviously there's just a fundamental disagreement. You view it as a sort of overarching coalition versus where I view it as genuine opposing forces. I think there are genuinely pro-immigrant liberal forces in this country, and I think they are opposed by the genuine nativist people in this country. Like I think these are genuine opposition. I don't think this is part of a coalition that's just being orchestrated by the billionaires.
I don't think it's being orchestrated by the billionaires. I think it's largely in service of the billionaires. That's why billionaires fund both sides, and equally, right? The same billionaires will fund the same sides.
I just think there's different billionaires that have different interests. I think Tom,
but they
Steyer
don't. I mean, many billionaires fund both sides.
Do you think Tom Steyer has the same interests as like Peter Thiel?
I think in a class sense, yes. I think they've. So have you read?
Doesn't Tom Steyer support a wealth tax?
Yes, we think social. Yeah, we think social democracy can at times be in the interest of the billionaire class.
Okay. Yes, I agree that Tom Steyer does not think he should be arrested and have all of his property expropriated. But I'm saying that they have other meaningful disagreements. They have
real disagreements about how the empire should be run. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if the empire. I don't know if the empire was running California. Okay.
It is. I mean, California is what the largest single economy in the empire. Have you read Settlers by Sakai?
I haven't, no.
That might describe what I'm describing better, which is, or just look into like Israel and how people talk about Israel, right? Which is how this came to in the first place, which is like, I think when people say there's no real difference, this is what they mean, is the disagreement is how to run empire. Sakai points this out really well. If you go back to, it's not necessarily historically extremely accurate, but it's a good explanation of this ideology, which is he goes back to the, what was it? Like Jamestown, where they were debating whether to expand or whether to negotiate with the natives, right? Okay. And the liberals back then were like, no. We should negotiate with the natives, turn them against each other, so they'll kill each other, and then we can betray the natives and kill them, right? And then the conservatives, the expansionists, who we would be Ben-Gvir nowadays, right, said, no, I want the land. Now I think we should go kill all of them. That's how I perceive a lot of the discussions between conservatives and liberals. Should we compensate the working class in America, calm them down so we can keep stealing from the global south, or should we consolidate profits as profit is pushing me to?
Okay, but you recognize that is just genuinely just not the conversation that is being had. Like, I understand that might be the sort of caricature how you feel like it plays out.
I see it all the time.
You're saying, okay, how often?
I just saw it in the Free Press. I just made a video about this.
The Free Press is which camp are you putting the Free Press in?
So the Free Press speaking on Israel were the liberals in Israel.
Well, no, the Free Press on Israel is like as right wing as it comes in this country.
In America, not in Israel.
I know. I said in this country.
Exactly. I was speaking on the dynamic regarding them in Israel. They were making a liberal Zionist argument to Israel. Yeah.
No, but I'm saying, okay, but I'm talking about the dynamic between the liberals and the conservatives in the context of like something like immigration.
I'm just trying to once you understand this dynamic, I think you'll start recognizing it if it's genuinely. Do you agree that it happens in Israel? Do you understand the dynamic as I'm describing in Israel?
I think more or less. I think that's probably how it works between I don't know, Yair Lapid's faction would be sure. Yes.
Okay, so maybe leftists would describe that as peak contradiction. The contradictions are peaking and are as clear as possible, right? Before they synthesize into what is either a successful genocide of the Palestinians or an abolition of the settler colonial state. And that's why I use it as an example. That's why, one of the reasons I use Israel as a good example of these is because it is a peak contradiction between the liberal and conservative factions.
I guess I'm disagreeing that that's the dynamic playing out with immigration. I think that there are. I don't think that's the dynamic.
Oh, I just think this is the dynamic playing out across all American politics.
No, I know. Trust me. I know that that's the dynamic used. I know, but that's what I'm saying. I don't think that is because we both agree. Those conversations are explicitly happening in Israel. That is the explicit motivation.
Yeah, but there's also implicit ones, right? Between natural nativism, right, and quiet expansionism, or national security and ethnic supremacy, right? They're explicit, and some of them are pretty implicit. I think a lot of the discussions about Democrats,
the support for immigrants in this country is not coming from we want to underpay them. The support is a belief in genuine people having free opportunity and people being able to come to this country
as long as it doesn't harm our wages, right?
No, well, that's where you get the nativists. No, that's where you get the nativists. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's where you have.
Do you think the majority liberal position is still nativist?
Probably, sure. But I agree the pro-immigrant faction is smaller than I would like it to be. But yeah, sure.
No, but do you think there are any non-nativist discussions in this case?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. There was a huge faction, for example, and I wish they'd been more. I wish they'd been more successful. Like there was a huge faction in the Biden administration that genuinely wanted there to be zero deportations. Unfortunately,
But
they
did they
failed.
want zero border control?
Well, I mean, when you say zero border control, what do you mean?
Like letting anyone in?
I don't know if there was anyone advocating for that. No.
Exactly. Then they're not zero nativist. Nativism is the belief that I have more of a right to be here than you if you were not born here. That's nativism.
Trust me. Okay, trust me.
The liberal position is nativism. It's there.
I am one of the few people that is authentically open borders. I just don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. But I would have zero.
Yes, but there's no one in power with this position.
Okay, but that's a minority.
That's my point.
But being against deportations is effectively like.
No, it's not. Absolutely not. The border is one of the most violent things about American existence, regardless of whether it's an import, whether it's pushed in or pushed out. Absolutely not. What? No. I give them zero passes. The border is despicable and genocidal. So no. Border gross, border bad, and I don't think we can give them a pass, right? To say they were non-nativist factions. Stupid. Obviously not. Obviously, they're all nativist. It's a discussion about how to be nativist.
No, like I said, I think we're using too expansionist of a term because, like, by that logic, we're saying like 99.999% of the country is nativist. It's like okay,
yes,
like okay, I mean sure, but
the policy of protecting the interests of the native-born, establishing inhabitants against those of immigrants. Yeah, my right to be here is an interest, and the border protects it.
Sure, okay, but like I said, trust me, as somebody that would love to see no borders,
you just agree that people like have no power in this country.
But do you agree? Oh, but that's not a liberal thing. Like even leftists, like unfortunately, there's just not very many people that are like that.
I'd say if you're anti-left, if you're leftist and you're anti-capitalist, and you're anti-colonialist, it's a necessary consequent. But I would say a lot of people that call themselves leftists in America aren't, because we have a lot of liberal brain rot to break through. And
well, it's genuinely opposition to borders is one of the things I genuinely very much like about the left. I just wish there were more leftists that actually really wanted that.
I'd say every leftist has to be anti-nationalist, unless they're like tactically nationalist for colonized countries. But regardless, my point stands. Between liberals and conservatives, the discussion is how to be nativist. How brutal should we be?
I disagree. I would argue that just like you're saying definitionally, if you're saying being liberal or being leftist means you're opposed to borders, I would argue that that would also be a core part of liberalism.
Obviously not.
Well, how are you saying obviously not?
Not a single liberal in America believes that.
There's no leftists in power that believe that.
Exactly, because leftists aren't in power. There's no leftists in power.
No, but what's the highest leftist in the country?
What?
Like the highest,
I don't know any leftists that are. I don't know. I think it's actually like literally impossible to be effectively a leftist within an empire, just by definition.
Okay, but do you think that Zoran is a leftist?
Under American terms, yes. I'd say he's a social democrat, though.
My guess is Zoran is not. My guess is Zoran's not pro open borders, though.
Yeah, whatever. I don't care what Zoran personally believes. I'm talking positionality-wise.
No, but you're saying
Zoran, in his base of power, is social democracy. And
your evidence for saying liberalism is not diametrically opposed to like being nativist is saying, well, there's no liberals that are anti-nativist. But then I'm saying,
no, my evidence is that it's not. My evidence is I know what liberalism is, and that's what it is. I have an understanding of liberalism. I'm using one example.
What would your understanding of liberalism have to do with nativism?
Liberalism is predicated upon nationalism. Always has been. From classical liberalism to neoliberalism, always has been. You don't think classical liberalism believed in nationalism?
The neoliberals were pro open borders, though.
They weren't anti-nativist, though. They were only pro open borders for very specific economic reasons. They did not believe in giving all people. The neoliberals did not believe in giving all people equal citizenship.
Milton Friedman was famously open. Yes, he was very famously open borders.
No, he wasn't. Not in America with a social safety net.
Yes,
you weren't watching enough Friedman, my friend.
Yes, no, I know Friedman would say, "Get rid of the social safety net, be open borders."
Exactly, but until then.
But so he was obviously he was in favor of open borders.
So, that's not. If I say do this and then I will support this, I'm not in support of this, my friend. Ideologically, like if you're going, this is a good value and I really want him to hold it, so he had some condition where he would do it. Sure, whatever, everyone does. But no, like for example, if like a white supremacist would say, if Mexico only had white people in it, we could have open borders. They're not pro-open borders, right? They're just pro-white supremacists. Milton Friedman was pro-capitalist. He said, under the conditions in which capitalism would be ideal with open borders, let's do it. Now, Milton Friedman, right? Also, you're not a neoliberal, are you?
I'm not a neoliberal. I'm just saying Milton Friedman, the core neoliberal, was pro-open borders. Like that was a core part.
That's false. That's not true. He wasn't in reality.
That was a core part of his ideology. That was a core part of his ideology.
Did he advocate for America right now to implement open borders?
He advocated for, yes, open borders and for getting rid of the social safety net.
Which before which?
He said you had to do both.
No, he said you need to get rid of the social safety net first because it was one's a logical predicate.
Okay, I'm not even a neoliberal, so I don't even know why I chose to go down this line of argument.
What would you? So which type of liberal? I'm talking in two senses. One like. Whatever actual basic classical liberalism has been deformed in America, and then
limited government, constitutional rights, things like that. Yes, but pro-immigration, internationalism, those are key facets of liberalism.
Internationalism, but not anti-nationalism, right?
I'm anti-nationalist, but
I think that's opposite to what liberalism actually means, which is classical liberalism, which is predicated upon nationalism.
I agree that classical liberalism was born out of obviously when nation states were arising. So sure,
I would agree. So I think it's impossible to be not nativist at all if you believe in a nation state that's kind of like built into it. I also think like American liberals, right, which I'm talking about, like people that call themselves liberal in America, which has been so general and so nonsensical that it means nothing at this point other than just like not conservative, I guess, because it's just like the Democratic Party, which is a vacuous pit of non-values. If I am to draw a circle around that, it is like an entry level is to call yourself like American. Like you have to like identify with America and believe America should exist. Like I think that's historically true.
I don't know if I would agree. Like I said, I feel like the way that we're getting to this though is by you saying, like, just ignoring. Obviously, there have been absolutely leftist movements in this country that were also nationalistic, and I know you're saying that those are inherently contradictory. But I'm saying at least liberalism, at least as I understand it, would also be the same way. But I get that you're just
whatever. I think you mean by some people call themselves liberals and are
like were the Black Panthers against this. Whatever. Were the Black Panthers leftist? Were the Black Panthers leftist? Were the Black Panthers leftist?
Lots of Black Panthers ideology were leftist. Yes.
Okay, but they didn't want the abolition of the nation state.
Yeah, they did.
I've read. Okay, what are we?
They were intercommunalist. Fred Hampton was an intercommunalist. He was pretty explicit about this.
Wait, with the intercommunalist, that doesn't change the fact that they didn't want the abolition of the nation state.
Yes, they did. They were intercommunalists.
Okay,
that's why it's not internationalists, because they believed in yes, black nationalism, but only as an opposition to the American nation state.
I don't know. Okay, I disagree.
Read Fred Hampton, my friend. Fred Hampton was pretty explicit about anti-nationalism.
But there's a difference between being anti-nationalism in the sense that you oppose the way that nationalism affects
itself. No, they did not want nation states to exist.
Maybe Fred Hampton. I don't think that's true of the majority of, like, Huey Newton. I don't think that's true.
I mean, Fred Hampton's who I'm going to take the theory from. Most of the Black Panthers got a few months of political education and don't speak for the whole entire Black Panthers. And by the way, I wouldn't say all of them were necessarily leftist. If I'm going to take what the Black Panthers stood for, I'm going to take the most probably nuanced and complicated theorist from it. Fred Hampton. Huey P. Newton is pretty solid. And I would need to see what Huey P. Newton knows about this. But Fred Hampton certainly was intercommunalist.
Okay. Well, don't get me wrong. He might have been, and I don't dispute that there are. I agree that leftism lends itself to being anti-nationalist. I would just also say that liberalism does. At least if taken the principles to their logical conclusion. But regardless,
nationalism to their logical conclusion, they're anti-nationalist. I think not.
I would argue nationalism is not core to liberalism, but.
Okay, well, my point comes more to not to the semantics of whatever liberalism is, but to describe a specific dynamic, right, within settler colonies and colonialism as a whole, right, which is the primary political debate, is often not between whether we continue the empire or end it, or whether we include, the global South or at the time the natives into the empire.
I agree. The vast majority of liberals, including myself, would not want the end of the empire as you define it. I agree.
Yes. Yeah, so that's my understanding of it all, is that you are, when you are in discussion with conservatives, when you are talking about, do we give healthcare? how do we treat immigrants? What do we even do in foreign policy? It is a discussion typically predicated upon the aim, the implicit value of maintaining the empire as it stands. And that's why, that's the dynamic.
Yeah. Like I said, coming full circle, I'm using the term as you're defining empire. Sure, I would agree, but obviously that's not.
Do you not think America's an empire?
No, but I would say that the things that I support in terms of foreign policy are not because I want to continue an empire. Like I don't support like arming Ukraine because I'd like to continue an empire. I support arming Ukraine so that they can resist Russian aggression.
Yeah, every imperialist has justification for their imperialism.
Do you think it's imperialist to support Ukraine?
I think America's actions by like
this is
the
what
American
I mean by
empire.
saying. This is what I meant at the beginning when I said people will say that they're using like Leninist definition, but like the Leninist definition of imperialism would not be sending weapons to Ukraine.
No, but no, it wouldn't. You're right. It would be trying to establish and maintain a certain regime within Ukraine to export foreign capital into there to expropriate wealth from Ukraine, which can properly be understood to be what's happening. Yes. I think we would like to maintain economic dominion over Ukraine as opposed to Russia holding it. Yeah, I think that's true.
I disagree in the sense that if that was our only interest, we would just let Russia take Ukraine, and then we would just
not our only interest.
Economic integration with Russia.
What did Trump offer the Donbass to Russia for?
Yeah, we both agree Trump's a fascist, though. I actually don't think Trump's I don't think Trump's ideological enough to be a fascist, but he'd like fascists around him.
But you don't think. But like fascists basically are a cancerous form of imperialism.
But I don't think the Biden administration, not to go hard on Biden, I don't think he was supporting Ukraine because he wanted exporting finance capital from Ukraine or American finance
Why do you think the American state supports Ukraine and doesn't, for example, support Georgia as much?
Why don't we support Georgia as much? Because there's not an active invasion happening there right now.
Yes, there is. There's an active occupation. What? You don't know about the occupation of Georgia?
The occupation of Georgia is not the same as the invasion of Ukraine, though.
Really? It's more proportional.
Not really, no.
They hold 11% of Ukraine. They hold 11% of Georgia right now, fully occupied.
Trust me, I wish we were supporting Georgia more. But the occupation of Georgia is more the occupation because it's more akin to the occupation of Ukraine that was taking place like prior to 2022. It's like with Georgia, the claim Russia's claiming breakaway states that they're like backing, and that's the same thing that was happening in Ukraine prior to 2022.
Yeah, but they have effectively Russia's claimed de jure occupation of Georgia, and they are administering it, and they are extracting labor and resources from those portions of Georgia.
I just think America doesn't have.
Yeah, I think America doesn't have much economic interest in protecting Georgia because it was not previously part of their bloc. Right, of their influential bloc, and I think
I don't think that's why.
Do you think Biden was just doing it kind of like out of the goodness of his heart, or just because he saw Russia as a threat?
No, I think it's because there was a massive invasion.
Just scale? What? There was a massive invasion in Cambodia. America doesn't give a fuck. Do you think we care about massive invasions?
I said, we started this, and I said I agree that, for example, there's scales of violence that would make people vomit that are taking place in all sorts of places in the global south. But I was saying that there's internalized racism, and we even saw this when the invasion of Ukraine happened. There were like those newscasters that famously said like, "Oh, this is happening to like blonde-haired, blue-eyed people," and like I think there is a lot of implicit racism for why some people care more about Ukraine than other conflicts around the world. But I do think there's just a genuine motivation to want to defend like a perceived democratic nation from outside aggression.
I mean, it wasn't democratic, but
it was democratic. Well, not okay. How was it?
The CIA-backed coup was democratic.
It wasn't a CIA-backed coup. There's no evidence. There was no evidence. Okay. One, there's no evidence of the CIA-backed coup. Two, Petro Poroshenko came to power. He lost his party lost the election. Zelensky's was actually more like open to Russia, and he's the one who was in power since 2017.
I'm aware, but the coup was still not democratic.
Like I said, it was more of an insurrection than a coup.
That's what we call a pro-Western coup. This is the thing. If it was anti-Western, it would be labeled as a junta. Like,
no, it was.
There's so much apologia for.
If it wasn't a democracy, how did they hold elections? And the opposing party that had very different views on how they should perceive Russia came to power.
If it wasn't a democracy, how was there a party switch? Is your question?
A party switch that had a fundamentally different ideology.
Not a fundamentally different ideology. Did it want to undo the coup?
So when
Was
you say
was there?
undo the coup, like
I'm so
bring
sorry, my friend.
Yanukovych,
Was there a coup in Egypt? Was there a coup in
Zelensky
Egypt?
under El-Sisi, sure.
Yeah. Was there a party switch?
Sort of, I guess.
Yeah.
But okay, but
Wonderful.
no. I'm not
That's not how
disputing that there
coups
was.
work.
I'm not disputing that there was a violent change of power in 2014. I'm saying
Was
there
it
was
a
a
coup?
change of power in 20. No, it's an insurrection. I'm saying there's a
What's the
27. There was
difference?
an insurrection would be like a violent overthrow from above, from below, versus like a coup would be more
Was
like
the Arab Spring not a violent overthrow from below? So was Egypt an
no.
insurrection as well?
No. So in if we're you're confusing timelines. The overthrow of Mubarak, I think, could accurately be described as an insurrection. The overthrow
Okay,
of Mohammed Morsi would be described as a coup because it wasn't like it came from below; it came from a military officer.
sure. So
Okay,
there was. So I'm describing Arab Spring with Mubarak.
that's not what
overthrow.
happened. That's not what happened in Ukraine. In Ukraine, it was an uprising. Like nobody in the government was the one who took power.
Okay, so you think the Arab Spring in Egypt, right? Specifically, the overthrow of Mubarak, right, was a coup or was an insurrection?
No, the insurrection. It would be more.
Was it a democratic insurrection?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. And you think that, and what qualified as a democratic insurrection?
That they held fair and free elections after the overthrow.
Is that the only qualification? Can I overthrow America and have free and fair majoritarian elections?
If you did, that would be a democratic revolution, sure.
Would it be? You think you would agree that if I go kill Trump and have free and fair majoritarian elections outside of our constitution?
Just to be clear, that's not what happened in Egypt or in Ukraine. But it doesn't happen very often. But yes, if you overthrew a democracy and then also established a democracy, like yes, that would be a democratic revolution, I guess.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And what if there was like evidence of foreign interference in one of those, which there was in Ukraine? You can deny that, but like they intercepted a good article on this.
Yes,
I mean, Al Jazeera has good data on this.
It's literally just the phone call between what's the person's name? I forgot her name. She was called. The phone call doesn't show anything though. I'm sorry, it just doesn't.
If you don't, I mean, you can reject the reality that like, okay, so there just so happened to be a coup, and then there just so happened to be, the largest expansion of American military support the world has seen in the past 20 years, following an invasion.
That didn't happen until 2020. That didn't happen until 2022. That didn't happen until
No,
Russia
I'm aware.
invaded.
I'm not saying they're causal. I'm saying that Ukraine, the interest of maintaining Ukraine within the Western sphere, had many forms of American foreign intervention, one of which was America giving billions of dollars to its allies. And by the way, I think this idea that like the only reason we care about this one is because it was a democracy.
I'm sorry, but ignores what happened in Ukraine. Yanukovych was going to make a deal with the European Union. Russia put an enormous amount of pressure on Yanukovych not to take the deal. When he backed out of it, there were huge mass protests against Yanukovych. His military started firing on the protesters, and then there was a violent overthrow of his government.
Okay.
But I mean, that's what happened. It wasn't because Victoria Nuland made a phone call.
That's not what I'm claiming. Also, do you not think that the pressure from the EU, the economic power and pressure from the EU to join it, is a form of foreign intervention?
Well, no, because the people were the ones that wanted it.
So just because the people want the foreign intervention, does that not make it undemocratic?
Well, no, because there was overwhelming popular support for the EU deal. That's why there was so much hostility.
I'm confused about this. So, do you think America offering, for example, an end of sanctions against, let's say, Venezuela, do you think that that's democratic? Do you think that's a form of democracy? Even if the Venezuelans largely support the end of tariffs?
No, so there'd be a different. So I would argue there's a difference between sanctions and like signing like an increased trade deal. I would say that's
not really. Not really, because if you've actually read like Lenin's description of international foreign capital, this is how international foreign capital exerts influence by the status quo being.
I know, but you could have democratic will for increased economic integration with a trading bloc.
Yeah, you can, but that trading bloc is still an undemocratic force upon that country.
You can try and say that, but I don't even know why that's relevant.
True. If a country that's
not a CIA coup though.
Oh, sorry. There was foreign intervention in that sense, but there was also foreign intervention in very clear, obvious on facts we both agree on, because you're rejecting the evidence everyone has seen of foreign intervention regarding Ukraine, which is fine. We're not going to have a full forensic here.
There's no literally the only evidence that exists is a phone call with Victoria Nuland. Is that the end? Also, that I believe it was the NED that they gave some food to some of the protesting. There was no weapons that were given to any of the groups. There was no
not the claim. And once
there was
again,
no coordination. There's no evidence whatsoever that any sort of thing, like I said, Victoria Nuland. There's no evidence.
I mean, didn't Radio Free Europe support it?
Radio Free Europe might have support. What do you mean support it?
Like release pro insurrection propaganda.
I'm sure. I genuinely don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if Radio Free Europe was like against Yanukovych. That wouldn't be shocking to me. Sure.
Would you consider that foreign intervention?
No. I'm saying when we say a CIA,
you don't think Radio Free Europe, an American-backed CIA-funded media organization pushing for intervention into a country, really?
When
I think America
CIA,
would consider that foreign intervention.
When I say CIA-backed coup, at least when I use the term, I believe that the intervention was causal. Like our intervention in Guatemala to overthrow Jacobo Arbenz was like causal. It was a CIA coup that was causally linked to his overthrow. Yanukovych's overthrow, in no meaningful sense, was back to like Radio Free Europe might have, I don't know, wrote an article against Yanukovych. Like, what are we even claiming?
I'm talking about foreign interference.
Okay, no, you said the CIA overthrew their government. That was the original claim.
The CIA overthrew when?
You claimed that they overthrew the government.
I would say that about. I would certainly say that about Egypt. I don't know that I said that about Ukraine.
That's literally what started this line of argument.
Okay, to be more specific, I mean foreign intervention. Then there was certainly foreign intervention.
Do you agree that the CIA was not causal?
I think it's nearly impossible to tell causality, especially if you go back further, right? Like I think Western pressure is certainly causal. Yes.
When we say Western pressure, you mean the people that wanted a European Union trade deal?
I think the like economic system essentially enforced by the West to exclude people that are not actively engaged with it politically from large scale share of imperial profits.
But they wanted to include them. That was the whole thing. Is that the European Union?
The people can want to be included in imperial profits, and that can still be Western pressure. Like my example with Nicaragua. Like the people wanted to vote for the Contras because of the extraordinarily stifling sanctions against them.
That doesn't change. Frankly, I've never seen anything that showed the Contras had majority support. But I don't think is that what you? I don't know.
Nicaragua, it was like 1980s.
No. I know obviously about that. I don't think the Contras had majority support though.
It was not like literally the Contras. It was a fascist party like that was from the Contras. They didn't call themselves the Contras when they were in power. But it was the anti-Sandinistas.
I know. The people that were the Contras, you're claiming they had majority support in Nicaragua? Like after the Sandinistas?
I'm saying the opposition to the Sandinistas ended up
okay, I don't know if that's true.
Sure.
But regardless, I just fundamentally reject the idea that the CIA overthrew the government in Ukraine. There's no evidence of that. And like when you're saying Western pressure, if you mean that the Ukrainians wanted to trade with the West, then sure. But
the enforcement of imperial benefits, and by the way, that would be Lenin's definition of imperialism. You would agree that's Lenin's definition.
That would be close. Yeah, that would be Lenin's definition. Yes, but us sending weapons to Ukraine wouldn't be.
But us sending weapons to protect and maintain our ability to do so would be.
But sure, but like I said, I disagree that that's why. And the only
I think. Okay, this comes back to why we think America acts. I think America acts to benefit international capital. You think America acts, I guess, because we're racist, which is like we are racist. But I think that is a specific thing about America. That's true.
No. I said the reason we don't care enough about Africa is because there's a lot of people that are racist.
I think we care a lot about Africa. We spend billions of dollars on Africa.
I don't think the average person cares about Africa very much at all, and I think it's terrible.
No, but I think the American state cares a lot about Africa.
When you say the American state, I'm talking about Americans.
But I'm talking about the American state, how the American state apparatus works. Why did it send billions of dollars to Ukraine? Or not? The American people didn't send shit to the Ukrainian people.
There was enormous public support for arming Ukraine.
There was, but okay, that's not why you said it was okay. I asked you why Biden did it. If you said there was enormous public support, there was also like. We do a lot of things without enormous public support, and we do it with. Is what you're saying? We send billions of dollars to Ukraine because there's enormous public support. Is that the singular causal reason?
I don't think it's a singular causal reason. No.
What do you think the contributing factors were?
I think like I said, I think the majority of people in the U.S. government felt that Ukraine was a democratic nation that was being aggressed upon by Russia, which is a historically hostile nation.
And why do we Why do we support Saudi Arabia, a non-democratic nation?
Oh, because I think, like I said, part of it has to do with implicit racism. Part of it has to do with people wanting stabilization over oil, all sorts of things.
Okay. So do you not think Ukraine was primarily economic?
No, not at all. No.
You don't think the fact that it threatened like people that we have close economic ties to in Western Europe was a large scale factor in why we were intervening?
No, I think if you want to say that like there was a risk that like it could go into NATO, sure, I would say that maybe that's a
Do
potential
you not
threat.
think? Okay. Do you think the fact that it threatened like our ability to defend that could be, and that's like a large economic factor?
No, I don't think it's primarily economic. No, like I said, especially compared to Saudi Arabia. Like, if there was an enormous amount of oil under the ground in Saudi Arabia, I don't think people would care very
Why are
much
we
about what's
not?
happening there.
Why are we not backing, like, for example, democratic reform in Saudi Arabia? We're actually actively suppressing it.
No, I agree. I just said because I think that there's a higher prioritization of making sure that the oil keeps flowing.
Okay. Why would the oil not keep flowing if we had democracy?
I think that there's a lot of people in the U.S. state that think that there would be a greater threat, or they view there is also like risk of like instability. I think there's a lot of people in the U.S. government that are very worried about instability in that part of the world.
Do you not think they feel that in Ukraine?
Yes, and I think they think Russia's causing it.
What do you think is causing instability in that part of the world, in Middle East?
Well, no. So I don't think that. I'm saying that I think there are a lot of people in the U.S. government that view if the Saudi monarchy was overthrown, they think that would lead to more instability.
Probably so, and I think that's probably okay. What I'm trying to get at is I just don't think we give a fuck about them being democratic. They also haven't had an election during the war, which is like fine, whatever. But I don't think we give a fuck
that's
about
like
Ukraine
super.
being,
Okay, well, you don't. Yeah, okay, whatever. That's like such a crazy talking point. That's such a crazy. They haven't had an election in war. That's like most countries don't have elections in the war. We were like unique that we had an election during the Civil War.
That's why I said whatever. I think it's a poor point. Yeah. I think more specifically, we don't give a fuck if they're a democracy. We are very happy to support democracies. We're very happy to support non-democracies. The one uniting factor is that it benefits the billionaire class in America. The Ukrainian war clearly benefits the billionaire class in America because of their business interests in Western Europe and dominance over Russia and our ability to basically like control Russian oil interests and exclude them from the Western economy. That I think is.
But the invasion actively hurt Russian oil interests in the economy. That would actually. What are you talking about? It's been much worse for the economy.
It would benefit American oil interests by pressuring the world to sanction Russia. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think it has more to do with the fact that Russia just invaded another country? You don't think it has anything to do with why
America gives a fuck about? I don't think America gives a fuck in the abstract about a country invading another country. No.
Okay, why the fuck would we it's a coincidence that we've given more support to Ukraine than like dozens of other nations put together over the last few years. We've given far more support to Ukraine.
I'm confused.
We've given far more support to Ukraine than Saudi Arabia, even though we have much more economic interest in Saudi Arabia.
But that's a non sequitur. I was saying we're protecting economic interests in both. One just costs more.
Yeah, I disagree though. Why we're supporting Ukraine because
but your point just doesn't actually cohere to my argument, right? Like, so our Saudi Arabian interests cost a certain amount. We pay it. We do that, right? It costs a lot when we're slaughtering people in Yemen. That's expensive, right? And we pay that.
Why is the Trump administration, which is more oligarchical, why are they sending less support to Ukraine? They've largely cut off support.
Well, what do you think the Trump administration's goal with Ukraine is?
I think he's being heavily influenced by people like J.D. Vance that don't think that we should have anything to do with Ukraine.
I think J.D. Vance is largely an avatar of certain portions of capital, certain very bullish portions of capital. So once again, the liberal side of an empire would argue we need to maintain our relationships with Western Europe because they maintain expansion of the empire and we can over time take more. Whereas Trump, the fascists are generally like the looters of empire as a general rule. And I think Trump is trying to loot Ukraine, right? That's right. He's trying to get quick and easy concessions to his billionaire backers.
I don't disagree with that part.
Yeah. So I think he's acting in the interest of short-term capital, whereas very often liberals act in the interest of long-term capital. And long-term capital benefits from stability in Western Europe and systemic possibilities of instability and threats of instability for extractive purposes in the Middle East. That's why we maintain the monarchy in Saudi Arabia.
I agree. There would be better economic outcomes if Ukraine was not overthrown, taken over by Russia. But I just don't think that is the primary motivator. But I understand that we just disagree.
It seems to be the only differentiating factor between us caring about this and us not caring about, for example, a bunch of other democracies being invaded.
Like what?
Let's see. India got invaded by Pakistan. Let's think. Cambodia got
Wait,
invaded
are you
by
kind of
what? Thailand.
you're kind of Indian? I don't. I have. That's not how I would classify that at all. Obviously, there was a terrorist attack in Kashmir, and then India started bombing Pakistan.
Yeah, it was a war between them two. Why did we not
Okay,
choose the? Why did we
I
not
don't
choose
think
the? Why did we not choose to back the democracy?
we did back the democracy.
Do we? How much foreign aid do we send to India?
I don't know if we sent a ton of foreign aid to Israel, but I mean,
Not much at all.
if you claim the Trump, sure. But also because the war lasted like what was a few days.
I mean, they're in an ongoing conflict.
Okay, that's not really the same. No,
But, like we don't. If we supported if pushing democracy was our primary foreign interest, we would not be supporting.
I'm sorry.
Dictatorial
don't.
regimes.
I mean, your example of like a comparable time of a country being invaded
Well,
in the
I could think
Indian-Pakistan
of
war.
better examples of us not supporting democracies or actively undermining democracies. I mean, all of
Let me-
Operation Condor. But
Sure, like I said during the Cold War, which I said was because it was primarily anti-Soviet. I agree.
you really don't think we've undermined any democracies since the end of the Cold War?
I'm trying to think of any. I'm sure I would agree that there's like at least a couple, but I would say in Haiti we definitely did under
Oh, yeah, we
Bush
certainly
with John Bertrand Aristide. But
Why do you think we did that? That I might
frankly-
actually agree is ideological, but in a very specific way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think there's an enormous hostility towards Haiti. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, fascinating conversation. Yeah,
Yes.
we're both losing our edge. I think we should probably go to bed.
I think that's probably true. Well, it's been a great conversation. It's felt like talking to a celebrity. I've seen your videos before, so awesome.
Hilarious. All right. Peace out. Thanks so much for having me on.
Have a good one. All right, guys. Well, that was the main conversation for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday. And yeah, I'm probably gonna go to sleep. So I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one.